Kaelas awoke to the sound of alarms blaring in her ears. Her vision blurred as she struggled to focus, the shattered remains of her ship strewn around her. The once gleaming Zephyrian vessel, now a twisted mass of metal, was unrecognizable. She winced as pain shot through her side, the sharp sting of a deep wound reminding her of the crash. The ship's systems had failed her, and now she was stranded on an unknown world alone. She forced herself to stand, her legs trembling under the unfamiliar gravity of this planet. The air was thick, heavier than the atmosphere of Zephyrus, and her lungs struggled to adjust. She activated her wrist console, hoping to find any surviving systems, but the screen flickered and died, a final confirmation of her dire situation. Kaelas scanned her surroundings, taking in the dense forest that loomed around her. The trees were massive, their bark rough and dark, unlike anything she had seen before. The ground was covered in a thick layer of decaying leaves, and the air was filled with a scent of damp earth. Her mind raced as she tried to assess her options. Her body, though stronger than a human's, was still vulnerable in this environment. The ship's emergency beacon had likely activated upon impact, but without functioning systems, she couldn't be sure. Her only hope was that someone would find her before it was too late. As she moved through the wreckage, searching for supplies, she came across the bodies of her crewmates. The sight of their lifeless forms twisted her stomach, but she forced herself to look away. There was no time for grief, not yet. Kaelas found a survival pack among the debris, its contents mostly intact. She quickly inventoried the items: a medkit, a water filtration device, rations, and a small plasma cutter. It wasn't much, but it would have to do. She couldn't stay near the crash site for long. Any rescue attempt would take time, and there was no guarantee that the beacon had even activated. She looked up at the sky, its color a deep, unsettling shade of blue. The sun was low on the horizon, casting long shadows across the forest floor. She had to move, and fast. The terrain was unfamiliar, and the night would bring unknown dangers. As she gathered her strength to begin the trek, a rustling in the underbrush caught her attention. Her muscles tensed, hand reaching instinctively for the plasma cutter. The sound grew louder, closer. Kaelas prepared herself for the worst, her heart pounding in her chest. Then, from the mist, a figure emerged. A tall, lean form, distinctly humanoid, but clearly not of her kind. The figure approached cautiously, stopping a few meters away. Kaelas could see the hesitation in his eyes, the way he scanned the wreckage before finally locking eyes with her. For a moment, neither moved. The silence between them was thick, filled with unspoken questions and uncertainty. Kaelas held her breath, wondering if this stranger was friend or foe. Finally, the figure spoke, his voice low and steady. "You're hurt." Kaelas nodded, unable to find her voice. The man took a step closer, his movements slow and deliberate. "Let me help you," he said. Kaelas hesitated, then nodded again. She had no other choice. The man reached out, his hand steady as he offered support. Kaelas leaned on him, grateful for the assistance but wary of the unknown. Together, they moved away from the wreckage, leaving the remnants of Kaelas's past behind. As they walked, Kaelas's mind raced with questions. Who was this man? How had he found her so quickly? And most importantly, could she trust him? Kaelas's legs trembled as she and Eli entered the dense forest. Each step was a struggle, her body still reeling from the crash and the unfamiliar gravity of Earth. Eli's presence was a small comfort, though her mind churned with unanswered questions. Who was this man, and why had he chosen to live in such a remote part of this dangerous planet? The trees around them were unlike any Kaelas had encountered on Zephyrus Tall, with rough, dark bark and leaves that seemed to hum with energy. The ground was soft underfoot, a mix of decaying leaves and moss, and the air was thick with a scent of salt and earth. In the distance, she could hear the faint sound of waves crashing against a shore. After what felt like hours, they emerged from the forest into a small clearing. Before her stood a simple, weathered cabin, built from sturdy wood and stone. The structure was nestled against a rocky cliff, its back protected by the natural barrier, while the front opened up to a sweeping view of the ocean. The sun had set, leaving the sky a deep, dark blue, speckled with stars. Eli helped Kaelas to the cabin's entrance, where he gently lowered her onto a bench just outside the door. "Rest here for a moment," he said, his voice calm and steady. "I'll get you some water." Kaelas nodded, too exhausted to respond. She watched as Eli disappeared into the cabin, her mind racing. The ship's crash replayed in her thoughts, the fear and confusion washing over her again. But she couldn't afford to dwell on it, not now. She had to focus on surviving. Eli returned with a metal cup filled with water. "Here," he said, offering it to her. "Drink slowly." Kaelas took the cup, her hand trembling slightly. The water was cool and refreshing, and she drank deeply, feeling some of her strength return. As she handed the cup back to Eli, she finally found her voice. "Thank you," she said, her words soft but sincere. Eli nodded, his expression unreadable. "You're safe here. We'll get you back on your feet." Kaelas looked at him, searching his face for any sign of deception. She saw none. "Why are you helping me?" Eli met her gaze, his eyes steady. "Because you need it." The simplicity of his answer left her momentarily speechless. She wasn't used to such straightforwardness on Zephyrus. Everything had a purpose, a motive. But Eli seemed genuine, and for now, that would have to be enough. Inside the cabin, the air was warm, heated by a small stove in the corner. The interior was modest but functional, a single room with a bed, a table, and shelves lined with jars and tools. A few candles flickered, casting soft shadows across the wooden walls. Eli guided Kaelas to the bed, where she sank down with a sigh. Her body ached, and every breath felt labored, but she forced herself to stay alert. "I need to repair my equipment," she said, glancing at the small bundle of items she had managed to salvage from the wreck. Eli shook his head. "Not tonight. You need rest." Kaelas frowned, frustration bubbling up inside her. She wasn't used to being told what to do, especially in such dire circumstances. But she knew he was right. Her body was on the verge of collapse, and she couldn't afford to push herself further. Reluctantly, she lay back on the bed, her mind still racing. Eli busied himself with lighting more candles and preparing something on the stove. The rhythmic crackling of the fire and the soft sounds of Eli's movements began to lull her into a light sleep, though her thoughts remained troubled. Hours later, Kaelas woke with a start, her body slick with sweat. For a moment, she didn't know where she was, but then the events of the day came rushing back. She sat up slowly, her muscles protesting the movement. The cabin was quiet, save for the occasional creak of wood settling and the soft snore of Eli, who had fallen asleep in a chair by the table. Kaelas quietly slid off the bed, her feet touching the cool wooden floor. Her mind was clearer now, and she knew she had to try and repair her equipment. If she could get at least one system back online, she might have a chance of calling for help. She retrieved the small bundle from where it rested by the bed and unwrapped it carefully. The plasma cutter, a few tools, and a small, damaged device that had once been her communication link to the Zephyrian fleet. Kaelas set the items on the table, her fingers moving with practiced precision as she began to work. But it didn't take long for frustration to set in. The technology was failing her, and she couldn't understand why. On Zephyrus, even the most basic equipment was nearly indestructible, designed to withstand the harshest conditions. Yet here, on this backward, primitive world, nothing seemed to function as it should. Kaelas's hands trembled as she tried to recalibrate the device, but it was no use. The screen flickered, then went dark. She stared at the lifeless piece of metal and circuitry, her mind a storm of emotions. Fear, anger, despair, they all welled up inside her, threatening to overwhelm her composure. A gentle hand on her shoulder startled her, and she turned to see Eli standing beside her, his expression soft with concern. "It's okay," he said quietly. "You've done all you can for tonight." Kaelas wanted to argue, to insist that she could fix it if she just had more time. But the look in Eli's eyes stopped her. He wasn't just offering her comfort, he was offering her strength, a quiet reassurance that she wasn't alone in this fight. She nodded slowly, letting the tension drain from her body. "I don't understand why it's not working," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "It should work. It's designed to." "Maybe Earth is different," Eli suggested. "Maybe your technology wasn't made for a place like this." Kaelas frowned, considering his words. He was right, Earth was different, in ways she was only beginning to comprehend. The gravity, the atmosphere, the strange energy she felt pulsing through the land and air. It was as if the very planet was rejecting her presence. She sighed, leaning back in the chair. "I feel lost," she confessed. "My entire life, I've relied on my knowledge, my skills, and now—" "You're not lost," Eli said gently. "You're just in a place that doesn't play by the same rules. But you'll adapt. We both will." Kaelas looked at him, seeing the quiet determination in his eyes. He was right, she had to adapt, or she wouldn't survive. And despite the overwhelming odds, she felt a small spark of hope. Perhaps, with Eli's help, she could find a way to make this world work for her. As the night wore on, Kaelas and Eli sat together in the dimly lit cabin, the silence between them no longer heavy with uncertainty, but filled with a growing understanding. They were two very different beings, from worlds that couldn't be more opposite. Yet they shared a common goal: survival. Kaelas awoke to the first light of dawn filtering through the small window of Eli's cabin. The events of the previous days weighed heavily on her, but the new day brought a renewed sense of purpose. She couldn't ignore the strange ruins she had seen during her descent, the ancient structures that bore a striking resemblance to Zephyrian architecture. Her instincts as a scientist and explorer urged her to investigate, to uncover the truth behind those ruins. As she quietly rose from the bed, she noticed Eli already awake, tending to a small fire in the stove. The warmth filled the cabin, and the faint smell of brewing tea wafted through the air. "Good morning," Eli said, his voice low but clear. He glanced at her, noting the determined look in her eyes. "You seem ready for something." "I need to explore the area," Kaelas replied, her voice steady. "There's something out there, something I need to understand." Eli nodded, his expression thoughtful. "I figured as much. I've seen those ruins from a distance, but I've never ventured that far. The forest is thick, and the terrain can be dangerous. But if you're set on going, I won't stop you. I'll come with you, though. This land can be unforgiving." Kaelas appreciated his willingness to help, though she knew this journey would be more than just a simple exploration. It could hold the key to understanding why her ship had crashed and what connection, if any, these ruins had to her people. After a quick meal of foraged berries and dried meat, they set out, leaving the safety of Eli's cabin behind. The air was crisp, with a gentle breeze carrying the scent of salt from the nearby ocean. The forest loomed ahead, dense and foreboding, but Kaelas's resolve was unshaken. As they walked, Eli spoke of the land, pointing out various plants and creatures that were native to the area. Kaelas listened intently, her scientific mind absorbing every detail. The flora and fauna of Earth were unlike anything on Zephyrus, an intricate tapestry of life that had evolved in ways she had never imagined. Some plants glowed faintly in the dim light, while others had developed strange, symbiotic relationships with the animals that lived among them. The further they ventured, the more Kaelas felt the weight of the unknown pressing upon her. The energy she had sensed in the land seemed to grow stronger, a subtle yet undeniable presence that thrummed beneath her feet. It was as if the very earth was alive, aware of her presence. After several hours of trekking through the dense underbrush, they finally reached the edge of the ruins. Kaelas's breath caught in her throat as she took in the sight before her. Towering stone structures, partially reclaimed by nature, stood silent and imposing amidst the encroaching wilderness. Vines snaked up the sides of the buildings, their roots slowly breaking apart the once immaculate stonework. This is incredible," Kaelas whispered, her voice filled with awe. The architecture was unmistakably Zephyrian, smooth, angular designs that spoke of advanced engineering and a deep understanding of materials. Yet the ruins were ancient, far older than any records she had ever studied. Eli remained silent, allowing Kaelas to take in the scene. She moved cautiously among the structures, her fingers brushing against the cool stone. The symbols etched into the walls caught her attention immediately. Intricate patterns and glyphs, some faded with time, others still sharp and clear. They were unmistakably Zephyrian, yet there were subtle differences that she couldn't quite place. "What do they say?" Eli asked, his voice breaking the silence. Kaelas frowned, her mind racing as she tried to decipher the meaning behind the symbols. "It's a record of sorts," she said slowly. "These symbols speak of a journey, an expedition to a distant world. But there's something more, a warning, perhaps? The translation is difficult." As she traced the symbols with her fingers, a sudden sense of foreboding washed over her. The warning wasn't just about the dangers of the journey, it was about the world itself. Earth. The Zephyrians who had come here before her had left behind these messages, not just as a record, but as a cautionary tale. Before she could delve deeper into the symbols, a loud rustling in the underbrush nearby made both Kaelas and Eli freeze. The sound grew louder, more frantic, as if something large was moving quickly toward them. Kaelas instinctively reached for the plasma cutter at her side, her heart pounding in her chest. From the shadows of the trees emerged a creature unlike any Kaelas had ever seen. It was massive, its body covered in thick, matted fur, with eyes that glowed a fierce yellow. Its limbs were powerful, built for crushing rather than speed, and its mouth was filled with sharp, jagged teeth. This was no ordinary predator, it was a force of nature, a testament to Earth's untamed wilderness. The creature snarled, its eyes locked on Kaelas as it began to circle her, each step heavy with predatory intent. Eli grabbed a thick branch from the ground, brandishing it as a makeshift weapon. "Get back," he shouted, trying to draw the creature's attention. But the beast was fixated on Kaelas. It lunged with terrifying speed, its powerful jaws snapping inches from her. Kaelas reacted on instinct, rolling to the side and narrowly avoiding the creature's attack. She scrambled to her feet, the plasma cutter now glowing faintly as she activated it. The next few moments were a blur of motion. The creature charged again, and Kaelas swung the plasma cutter, the blade slicing through the air with a hiss. It connected with the creature's side, sending a spray of sparks and blood into the air. The beast howled in pain but didn't retreat. Instead, it turned with renewed fury, determined to take down its prey. Eli swung the branch, striking the creature on its flank, but it barely seemed to notice. Kaelas knew they couldn't keep this up for long. The creature was too strong, too relentless. She had to end this quickly. Summoning every ounce of strength, Kaelas made a desperate move. As the creature lunged once more, she sidestepped its attack and drove the plasma cutter into its chest, the blade piercing through fur and muscle. The creature let out a final, ear-splitting roar before collapsing to the ground, its body convulsing once before going still. Kaelas stood over the fallen beast, her chest heaving with exertion. The plasma cutter flickered in her hand, its energy nearly depleted. Eli moved beside her, his face pale but resolute. "Are you okay?" he asked, his voice laced with concern. Kaelas nodded, though her mind was still racing from the encounter. I think so," she replied, her voice trembling slightly. She looked down at the creature, a mix of emotions swirling within her. It was a reminder of the dangers that lurked on this planet, of how easily she could have been overwhelmed. But it was also a testament to her resilience, to the strength she had found within herself. She had faced the unknown and survived, and with Eli by her side, she felt a newfound determination. Turning back to the ruins, Kaelas's gaze fell upon the symbols once more. The warning etched into the stone now carried a weight she hadn't fully understood before. Whatever secrets these ruins held, they were not meant to be uncovered lightly. "We need to be careful," Kaelas said, her voice firm. "There's more to this place than we know, and I feel we've only just begun to scratch the surface." As the sun dipped lower in the sky, casting long shadows over the ancient ruins, Kaelas couldn't shake the feeling that they had awakened something. The air around them felt charged, as if the land itself was holding its breath, waiting for what would come next. Kaelas's revelation in the ruins left her shaken, the weight of the knowledge she had uncovered bearing heavily on her mind. The ancient symbols, the remnants of her people's past, hinted at a connection between Zephyrians and Earth that she had never imagined. As the realization settled, she knew she couldn't stay hidden any longer. The truth needed to be uncovered, and time was running out. But Kaelas wasn't the only one aware of the importance of these ruins. Unknown to her, human factions had caught wind of strange occurrences in the area, unexplained energy signatures, sightings of unfamiliar technology, and the growing rumors of a mysterious figure. Greed and the desire for power fueled their pursuit. To them, Kaelas was not just an alien, but a potential key to untold advancements and dominance. The first signs of trouble came when Eli returned from a supply run, his expression grim. "We have a problem," he said, his voice tense. "There are people asking questions, dangerous people." Kaelas's eyes narrowed. "What do they want?" Eli shook his head. "They're after something. Someone? They've heard about strange activity, and they're convinced there's something valuable here. They're not just curious, they're hunting." Kaelas felt a cold knot form in her stomach. The peaceful isolation they had shared was now threatened by the very species she had come to study. "We can't let them find us," she said, her voice steady but filled with determination. Eli nodded in agreement. "We need to move, and fast. But we also need to think about what comes next." The complexity of human society was something Kaelas had barely begun to understand. Now, she was being forced to navigate its darker aspects: the greed, the fear of the unknown, and the lengths to which people would go to seize power. She knew that sharing her knowledge with Eli could endanger him, but withholding it could lead to their capture or worse. Their departure from the cabin was swift, the forest offering a temporary shield from prying eyes. But as they moved deeper into the wilderness, the sound of distant voices and the unmistakable hum of drones filled the air. The chase had begun. Kaelas's heart pounded as she and Eli darted through the dense foliage, their footsteps muffled by the thick undergrowth. The terrain was rugged, with steep inclines and rocky outcroppings that tested their endurance. Kaelas's mind remained focused on one goal: survival. Her knowledge, her very existence, had become a threat to the delicate balance of power on Earth. Eli led the way, his familiarity with the terrain proving invaluable. He moved with purpose, guiding Kaelas through hidden paths and narrow passages that offered some protection from the drones overhead. But the threat of capture loomed ever closer, the pursuers gaining ground with each passing moment. As they scrambled over a particularly treacherous ridge, a faint, rhythmic pulse resonated through the air. Kaelas paused, her senses tingling. "Do you hear that?" she whispered, her eyes wide with a mix of fear and wonder. Eli strained his ears, then nodded slowly. It's like a heartbeat," he murmured, his voice hushed. The pulse grew stronger as they descended into a hidden valley, its source shrouded in mist. The drone's relentless hum faltered, their signals disrupted by an unseen force. A sense of awe and trepidation washed over them as they ventured deeper into the valley, the mist parting to reveal a breathtaking sight. Nestled amidst the lush greenery, an otherworldly structure shimmered, its surface rippling with an ethereal glow. The pulse emanated from its core, a steady rhythm that seemed to resonate with the very essence of the earth. Kaelas's breath hitched. "What is it?" she whispered, her eyes fixed on the mesmerizing spectacle. Eli shook his head, his voice barely audible. "I don't know," he admitted, "but it feels ancient, powerful." As they cautiously approached the structure, a sense of both danger and sanctuary hung in the air. The human voices and the drone's hum had vanished, replaced by an eerie silence that amplified the steady pulse. Kaelas reached out a trembling hand, her fingertips brushing against the shimmering surface. A surge of energy coursed through her, images flashing before her eyes: symbols, faces, whispers of a forgotten past. It's Zephyrian," she gasped, her voice filled with wonder and disbelief. "This is a sanctuary." Eli's eyes widened in astonishment. "But how? Why here?" Kaelas turned to him, her expression a mix of determination and newfound hope. "I don't have all the answers yet," she said, "but I intend to find them. Together. With a shared glance, they stepped towards the pulsating structure, the gateway to a hidden world, a sanctuary that promised answers, but also held untold dangers. Kaelas and Eli stood at the edge of the hidden valley, where the structure shimmered with an otherworldly light. The rhythmic pulse grew stronger, resonating through the ground and into their bones. They exchanged a glance, a silent agreement passing between them. This was a threshold neither had crossed before, a place where the known world ended and the mysteries of the universe began. With a deep breath, Kaelas stepped forward, her heart pounding as she approached the shimmering surface of the sanctuary. Eli followed closely, his eyes wide with a mixture of awe and apprehension. As they passed through the gateway, the world around them shifted. The air grew thicker, the colors more vibrant, and the very essence of the sanctuary seemed to hum with life. Inside the sanctuary, the flora glowed softly, their leaves and petals pulsing with a gentle light. Trees with iridescent bark reached towards a sky that shimmered with hues of violet and gold. The architecture was a seamless blend of nature and technology, with structures that seemed to grow organically from the ground, their surfaces smooth and gleaming. Unfamiliar flowers thickened the air with their sweet, intoxicating scent, while a faint mist clung to the ground, lending the sanctuary an ethereal quality. As they walked deeper into the sanctuary, Kaelas felt the presence of something ancient, something that had been here long before any of them. The ground beneath their feet seemed to pulse in time with the heartbeat of the sanctuary, each step resonating with a deep, primal energy. As they ventured further, Kaelas and Eli encountered the sanctuary's inhabitants. They were a diverse group, each one a survivor of their own journey, with stories etched into their very beings. Some were tall and slender, with skin that shimmered like polished metal. Others were short and stocky, their bodies covered in intricate patterns that glowed faintly in the dim light. There were beings with wings, others with scales, and some with features that defied description. The aliens regarded Kaelas and Eli with cautious eyes. Their movements were slow, deliberate, as if they were evaluating the newcomers. Kaelas could feel the weight of their gazes, the unspoken questions hanging in the air. Eli's presence, in particular, seemed to cause a ripple of unease among them. The sanctuary, it seemed, had never welcomed a human before. The atmosphere grew tense as more of the sanctuary's inhabitants gathered. Whispers passed among them, their voices a mix of languages and tones that Kaelas struggled to comprehend. The tension was palpable, a current of mistrust running through the crowd. Kaelas felt a pang of unease. Here she was, finally among others like her, yet she was still an outsider. Eli's presence was the focal point of their suspicion. Some of the aliens stepped back, their eyes narrowing as they took in the sight of the human. Kaelas noticed a few of them exchanging worried glances, their expressions hardening. The sanctuary was a place of refuge, but it was also a place of secrets, and Eli represented an unknown that many were not ready to accept. One of the taller aliens, with silver hair that cascaded down their back, stepped forward. Their voice was soft, but it carried a weight of authority. "Why have you brought a human here?" they asked, their gaze fixed on Kaelas. "This place is sacred. It is not for outsiders." Kaelas swallowed, her mind racing as she searched for the right words. "Eli has helped me," she said, her voice steady despite the tension. "He saved my life. I trust him." The silver-haired alien frowned, their eyes narrowing. "Trust is earned, not given," they replied. "And a human's presence here is unprecedented." Before the situation could escalate further, a figure emerged from the shadows, moving with a grace that commanded attention. The crowd parted, revealing an elder being with deep, wise eyes and an air of quiet authority. Their skin was a deep, burnished gold, and they carried a staff that seemed to pulse with the same energy as the sanctuary. The elder's voice, calm yet powerful, cut through the tension. "Enough," they commanded, their gaze sweeping over the crowd. "Kaelas and Eli are under my protection. They deserve the respect due to all who seek refuge." The silver-haired alien bowed their head, stepping back into the crowd. The tension eased slightly, but Kaelas could still feel the weight of suspicion hanging in the air. The elder turned to Kaelas and Eli, their expression unreadable. You have crossed the threshold into our sanctuary, they said. But know this, your journey is not over. You have been brought here for a reason, and that reason will soon be revealed. Kaelas felt a mix of relief and anxiety as the elder spoke. She had longed to find others like her, to be among her own kind again. But now that she was here, she realized that belonging was not something that could be granted easily. She was an outsider in more ways than one, and her place in this new world was uncertain. Eli's presence added another layer of complexity. She could see the wariness in the eyes of the sanctuary's inhabitants, the mistrust that his presence had sparked. Kaelas knew that their journey together was far from over, and that the challenges they faced would test their bond in ways they had never imagined. As Kaelas and Eli were led deeper into the sanctuary, the elder spoke of the sanctuary's origins. This place was created by those who came before us, they explained. A refuge for those who sought to escape the chaos of the universe. But it is more than just a sanctuary. It is a place of power, a place where the boundaries between worlds are thin. Kaelas listened intently, her mind racing with questions. How had the sanctuary remained hidden for so long? What force protected it from the outside world? And what connection did it have to her own people? As they passed through a grand archway, Kaelas's breath caught in her throat. There, in the center of the chamber, stood a figure she never expected to see as Zephyrian, like her, but older, their eyes filled with a sadness that spoke of lifetimes of loss. The elder noticed Kaelas's shock and nodded slowly. Yes, they said softly, this one has been waiting for you. The air in the chamber grew heavy as the elder stepped aside, allowing Kaelas and Eli to approach the Zephyrian. The figure remained silent, their gaze locked on Kaelas. There was a familiarity in their eyes, a connection that Kaelas could not deny. Before she could speak, the Zephyrian raised a hand, and the chamber around them began to shift. The walls shimmered, the air crackling with energy as a series of intricate patterns appeared on the floor, forming a circle around Kaelas and Eli. This is your test, the elder's voice echoed in the chamber. If you wish to stay, you must prove yourselves. The sanctuary does not accept without reason. You must show that you are worthy. Kaelas felt the weight of the moment pressing down on her. The pulse of the sanctuary quickened, the energy in the air growing more intense. She glanced at Eli, his expression determined but uncertain. Together, they stepped into the circle, their fate now tied to the ancient power that surrounded them. The test had begun, and their place in the sanctuary hung in the balance. The shimmering gateway rippled as Kaelas and Eli crossed its threshold, stepping into a realm where the laws of nature seemed to bend and twist. Unfamiliar sounds filled the air, a chorus of whispers, hums, and chirps that resonated with an otherworldly energy. The air was thick with the scent of exotic flora, a heady mix of sweetness and spice that tickled Kaelas's senses. The sanctuary unfolded before them, a breathtaking tapestry of vibrant colors and intricate designs. Towering trees with iridescent bark reached towards a sky that shimmered with hues of violet and gold. Luminous flowers bloomed in profusion, casting a soft, ethereal glow upon the winding paths that snaked through the verdant landscape. The structures that dotted the landscape were unlike anything Eli had ever seen. They seemed to grow organically from the earth, their surfaces smooth and gleaming, adorned with intricate patterns that pulsed with an inner light. It was as if nature and technology had merged seamlessly, creating a haven of both beauty and advanced engineering. As they ventured deeper, the pulse that had guided them grew stronger, its rhythmic beat echoing through their very beings. It was a comforting presence, a steady reminder that they were not alone in this strange new world. The first inhabitants they encountered were a group of slender beings with skin that shimmered like polished metal. Their eyes, large and luminous, regarded the newcomers with a mix of curiosity and caution. One of them, a female with hair that flowed like liquid silver, stepped forward, her voice a melodious chime. "Welcome," she said, her gaze lingering on Eli. "We have not had human visitors in many cycles." Kaelas felt a surge of relief wash over her. "I am Kaelas of Zephyrian," she introduced herself, her voice echoing with the pride of her heritage. "This is Eli, he aided me." The silver-haired woman nodded, her expression thoughtful. "I am Lyra," she replied. "We are the Kaetari, keepers of this sanctuary. Your arrival is unexpected." Other beings emerged from the surrounding structures, their forms a mesmerizing tapestry of diversity. There were winged creatures with feathers that shimmered like opals, reptilian beings with scales that reflected the light like 1,000 tiny mirrors, and others with features that defied easy categorization. All eyes were on Kaelas and Eli, their presence a disruption to the sanctuary's carefully maintained equilibrium. A sense of unease settled over Eli as he took in the scene. He had always believed himself to be open-minded, but the reality of standing among beings from other worlds was both exhilarating and unsettling. He glanced at Kaelas, finding reassurance in her calm demeanor. Lyra led them through the winding paths, the air humming with the energy of the sanctuary. They passed through gardens where bioluminescent plants cast an otherworldly glow, and past workshops where artisans crafted intricate objects using technologies that Eli could only marvel at. As they walked, Lyra explained the sanctuary's purpose. "This haven was created by our ancestors, those who sought refuge from the chaos of the universe," she said, her voice filled with reverence. "It is a place of peace, where we can live free from the conflicts that plague other worlds." Kaelas's heart swelled with a mix of hope and longing. "My people, the Zephyrians, were they here?" she asked, her voice trembling slightly. Lyra paused, her expression turning somber. "Yes," she said softly, "the Zephyrians were once a part of this sanctuary. But they left long ago, their reasons shrouded in mystery." A wave of disappointment washed over Kaelas, but it was quickly replaced by a renewed determination. "I need to know what happened to them," she said, her voice firm. "I need to understand why they came here and why they left." Lyra nodded, her eyes filled with a wisdom that spoke of centuries of experience. "The answers you seek may lie within the heart of the sanctuary," she said, her voice laced with intrigue. "But first, you must prove yourselves worthy." She led them to a grand chamber, its walls adorned with ancient symbols and glyphs. At its center, a pulsating sphere of energy hovered, its light casting an ethereal glow upon the room. "This is the Nexus," Lyra explained. "It is the source of the sanctuary's power, the force that protects us from the outside world. But it is also a gateway to knowledge, to the memories of those who came before." Kaelas's eyes widened with wonder. "Can it show me my people's past?" she asked, her voice filled with anticipation. Lyra nodded slowly. "Perhaps," she said, "but the Nexus is not easily swayed. It requires a sacrifice, a willingness to face the truth, no matter how painful it may be." Kaelas exchanged a glance with Eli, their shared determination reflected in each other's eyes. They had come this far, faced countless dangers, and were now on the cusp of uncovering the secrets that had haunted Kaelas since the crash. "We're ready," Kaelas said, her voice unwavering. Lyra smiled, a flicker of admiration in her eyes. "Then step forward," she said, gesturing towards the Nexus, "and let the truth be revealed." As Kaelas and Eli approached the pulsating sphere, a wave of anticipation washed over the gathered crowd. The sanctuary's inhabitants watched with bated breath, their own hopes and fears intertwined with the fate of these two newcomers. The air crackled with energy, the Nexus thrumming with a power that seemed to transcend time and space. The moment of truth had arrived. Kaelas and Eli stepped into the heart of the Nexus, its pulsating energy enveloping them like a warm embrace. The world around them dissolved, replaced by a kaleidoscope of images and sensations. Memories, not their own, flooded their minds, glimpses of distant stars, the thrill of exploration, the sorrow of loss. Kaelas gasped as she witnessed the Zephyrians' arrival on Earth, their sleek ships descending upon a pristine world teeming with life. She saw her ancestors marveling at the planet's beauty, their hearts filled with hope for a new beginning. But the vision soon turned dark, revealing a conflict, a clash between the Zephyrians and an ancient, enigmatic force that guarded Earth's secrets. The images swirled and shifted, showcasing the Zephyrians' struggle for survival, their technology faltering against the planet's raw power. Kaelas felt their desperation, their fear, as they were forced to make a heartbreaking choice to scatter, to hide, to erase their memories in order to protect the knowledge they carried. The Nexus's energy intensified, its pulse echoing the rhythm of Kaelas's own heartbeat. She saw herself, a child on Zephyrus, listening to tales of the lost colony on Earth, her heart filled with a longing to uncover the truth. The vision faded, replaced by the present, the faces of the sanctuary's inhabitants watching her with a mix of empathy and expectation. The Nexus's glow subsided, and Kaelas and Eli found themselves back in the chamber, the echoes of the past still lingering in their minds. The gathered crowd looked at them expectantly, their silence a testament to the profound experience they had just witnessed. Lyra stepped forward, her expression gentle. "The Nexus has spoken," she said. "You have proven yourselves worthy. Welcome to the sanctuary." A collective sigh of relief swept through the chamber, followed by a chorus of welcoming murmurs. Kaelas and Eli exchanged a relieved glance, their hearts lighter despite the weight of the revelations they carried. In the days that followed, Kaelas and Eli immersed themselves in the sanctuary's unique culture. They learned the language, shared meals with the other inhabitants, and participated in the daily rituals that bound this community together. Kaelas found solace in the company of her fellow Zephyrians, their shared history and experiences forging a bond that transcended the vastness of space and time. Eli, too, found a place within this diverse society. His practical skills and knowledge of Earth proved valuable, earning him the respect of the sanctuary's inhabitants. He marveled at their technology, their understanding of the universe, and their unwavering commitment to protecting their haven. The sanctuary's library became Kaelas's second home. She spent countless hours poring over ancient texts, deciphering the intricate language, and piecing together the fragments of her people's history. The Zephyrians had come to Earth seeking not just a new home, but a deeper understanding of the universe's mysteries. They had sought to harness the planet's unique energies, to unlock the secrets of creation itself. But their ambition had blinded them to the dangers that lurked beneath the surface. The ancient force they encountered, a sentient entity intertwined with the very fabric of Earth, had resisted their intrusion. The conflict that ensued had been devastating, leaving the Zephyrians scattered and their knowledge fragmented. As Kaelas delved deeper into the past, she began to understand the true nature of the prophecy she had uncovered in the ruins. It spoke of a convergence, a moment when the Zephyrians would return to Earth, their fate intertwined with that of the planet itself. The choice she had to make was not just about survival, but about the future of two worlds. Eli, sensing her growing unease, offered his support. "Whatever you're going through, Kaelas, you don't have to face it alone," he said, his voice filled with warmth and understanding. Kaelas looked at him, her heart filled with gratitude. "Thank you, Eli," she said, "but this burden, it's mine to bear. It's my people's legacy, their responsibility." Eli nodded, his expression serious. "I understand," he said. "But remember, you're not alone. We're in this together." Their bond deepened with each passing day, a connection forged in the crucible of shared experiences and mutual respect. Kaelas found herself drawn to Eli's quiet strength, his unwavering loyalty, and his genuine curiosity about her world. And Eli, in turn, was captivated by Kaelas's intelligence, her resilience, and the depth of her compassion. But even as they grew closer, the shadow of the human factions loomed over the sanctuary. The outside world, with its greed and ambition, threatened to shatter their newfound peace. Kaelas knew that the time would come when they would have to face the consequences of their discovery, to confront the forces that sought to exploit the sanctuary's secrets. And as the tension mounted, Kaelas couldn't shake the feeling that the prophecy was drawing closer, its tendrils reaching out to touch the lives of everyone within the sanctuary. The choice she had to make would not only determine her own fate, but the fate of two worlds teetering on the brink of an uncertain future. The tranquility of the sanctuary was shattered one morning by a piercing alarm that echoed through the hidden valley. Kaelas and Eli, startled from their slumber, rushed to join the other inhabitants in the central chamber. Lyra stood at the nexus, her usually serene expression replaced by one of grim determination. "They've found us," she announced, her voice echoing through the chamber. "The humans are at our doorstep." A wave of unease swept through the crowd, their faces etched with a mix of fear and defiance. The sanctuary had remained hidden for centuries, its protective force shielding them from the prying eyes of the outside world. But now, their haven was under threat, their existence exposed. Kaelas's heart pounded in her chest. The human factions, driven by their insatiable greed and thirst for power, had finally breached the sanctuary's defenses. The knowledge she possessed, the secrets of the Zephyrians and the prophecy, were now at risk of falling into the wrong hands. Eli gripped her hand, his touch a silent reassurance. "We won't let them take this from us," he said, his voice firm. "We'll fight for our home." Kaelas nodded, her resolve hardening. "We have to," she said, "not just for ourselves, but for the future of both our worlds." The sanctuary's inhabitants rallied, their diverse skills and abilities converging into a unified force. The Kaetari, with their mastery of the Nexus's energy, formed a protective barrier around the sanctuary, its shimmering surface repelling the humans' initial probes. The winged beings took to the skies, their keen eyes scanning the surrounding landscape for any sign of intrusion. The reptilian warriors, their scales gleaming in the dim light, prepared for close combat, their weapons humming with an otherworldly energy. Kaelas and Eli joined the defense efforts, their unique perspectives proving invaluable. Eli's knowledge of human tactics and the surrounding terrain allowed them to anticipate the attackers' movements, while Kaelas's understanding of Zephyrian technology helped them identify weaknesses in the sanctuary's defenses. As the human forces closed in, the tension within the sanctuary mounted. The air crackled with anticipation, the pulse of the Nexus quickening, as if mirroring the collective heartbeat of its inhabitants. Kaelas felt a surge of adrenaline, her instincts honed by years of training and survival kicking in. The first wave of attack came swiftly, a barrage of drones and ground vehicles breaching the forest edge. The Kaetari's barrier held, deflecting the initial assault, but the humans were relentless, their numbers overwhelming. Eli, armed with a salvaged Zephyrian energy rifle, took position on a high vantage point, his aim steady and precise. Kaelas, her fingers dancing across a holographic control panel, rerouted the sanctuary's power grid, channeling its energy towards the defensive systems. The battle raged, a chaotic dance of light and shadow. Explosions rocked the valley, the ground trembling beneath their feet. The sanctuary's inhabitants fought with a ferocity born of desperation, their lives and their home hanging in the balance. In the midst of the chaos, Kaelas caught a glimpse of the human leader, a ruthless figure with cold, calculating eyes. He barked orders into a communicator, his voice filled with an arrogance that made her blood boil. This man, driven by his own ambition, was willing to sacrifice countless lives to achieve his goals. Kaelas's anger fueled her determination. She couldn't let him win, couldn't let him destroy the sanctuary and everything it represented. With a surge of adrenaline, she tapped into the Nexus's energy, channeling its power through the ancient technology at her disposal. The sanctuary's defenses intensified, the shimmering barrier growing brighter, its pulse resonating with a newfound strength. The human attackers faltered, their technology malfunctioning under the onslaught of Zephyrian power. But the victory was short-lived. A tremor shook the ground, and a section of the barrier flickered, then collapsed. The human forces surged forward, their shouts echoing through the valley. Kaelas's heart sank. They had breached the sanctuary's defenses, their relentless pursuit threatening to overwhelm them. But even as despair threatened to consume her, she felt a hand on her shoulder. Eli stood beside her, his expression resolute. "We won't give up," he said, his voice steady. "Not now, not ever." Kaelas looked at him, her heart swelling with gratitude and a newfound respect. This human, once an outsider, had become an integral part of their fight, his courage and determination a beacon of hope in the face of darkness. Together, they rallied the remaining defenders, their voices rising above the din of battle. The sanctuary's inhabitants fought with renewed vigor, their spirits lifted by the unwavering resolve of their human ally. The tide of the battle began to turn. The Zephyrian technology, amplified by the Nexus's energy, pushed back the human forces. The attackers, their confidence shattered, began to retreat, their dreams of conquest crumbling before their eyes. As the last of the human forces fled the valley, a hush fell over the sanctuary. The smoke cleared, revealing the scars of battle-damaged structures, fallen trees, and the scattered remnants of human technology. Kaelas and Eli stood side by side, their chests heaving with exertion. The victory was bittersweet, the cost of their freedom etched on the faces of their comrades. But they had prevailed, their sanctuary safe, their secrets protected. As the sun began to rise, casting a warm glow over the battered landscape, Kaelas felt a sense of peace settle over her. The battle was over, but the war for their future had just begun. The prophecy still hung over them, its implications growing clearer with each passing day. Kaelas knew that the time was coming when she would have to make a choice that would determine the fate of both Zephyrians and humans, and as she looked out at the dawning sky, she realized that the answer lay not in the past, but in the present. In the bonds she had forged, the trust she had earned, and the hope that flickered in the hearts of those who had found sanctuary within these ancient walls. In the aftermath of the battle, the sanctuary hummed with a newfound energy. The victory over the human forces had solidified the bonds between its inhabitants, their shared struggle forging a sense of unity that transcended their diverse origins. But the scars of the conflict ran deep, a constant reminder of the fragility of their haven and the looming threat that still lingered beyond its borders. Kaelas, her mind still reeling from the intensity of the fight, sought solace in the library's quiet embrace. The ancient texts, once a source of fascination and discovery, now held a weight of responsibility she had never anticipated. The prophecy, its cryptic verses echoing in her thoughts, demanded a decision, a choice that could shape the destiny of two worlds. She sat amid stacks of weathered scrolls, her fingers tracing the intricate symbols that held the key to her people's past. The Zephyrians had come to Earth seeking knowledge, power, and a new beginning. But their arrogance had blinded them to the planet's inherent wisdom, its delicate balance of energy and life. The prophecy spoke of a convergence, a moment when the Zephyrians would return to Earth, their fate intertwined with that of the planet itself. Kaelas, the sole survivor of the ill-fated expedition, now held the power to fulfill or defy that prophecy. The choice was hers, and the consequences were immeasurable. As she wrestled with the implications of her discovery, Eli entered the library, his footsteps silent on the moss-covered floor. He approached her, his expression a mix of concern and understanding. "You haven't slept," he observed, his voice gentle. "The battle took its toll on all of us, but you seem burdened." Kaelas looked up at him, her eyes reflecting the weight of her thoughts. "The prophecy," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "It's clearer now, its meaning more urgent. I have to make a choice, Eli. A choice that will affect not just me, but everyone here, and perhaps even the entire planet." Eli sat beside her, his presence a comforting anchor in the storm of her thoughts. "Tell me," he said, his voice steady. "Whatever it is, we'll face it together." Kaelas took a deep breath, her fingers tracing the symbols on the ancient scroll. "The prophecy speaks of a convergence," she began, her voice filled with a newfound clarity. "A moment when the Zephyrians will return to Earth, drawn by the echoes of their past. But their return will not be peaceful. It will trigger a conflict, a clash between those who seek to control Earth's power and those who seek to protect it." Eli listened intently, his brow furrowed in concentration. "And you? You're the key to this convergence?" he asked, his voice laced with concern. Kaelas nodded, her gaze fixed on the ancient symbols. "The prophecy speaks of a chosen one, a survivor who will bridge the gap between our worlds. I am that survivor, Eli. The choice I make will determine the outcome of this convergence." A heavy silence fell over the library, broken only by the soft rustling of the leaves outside. Eli reached out, his hand finding Kaelas's, his touch a silent promise of support. "What are your options?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Kaelas closed her eyes, the weight of the decision pressing down on her. "I can embrace the prophecy," she said, her voice heavy with a burden of responsibility. I can call my people back to Earth, fulfill their destiny, and risk the conflict that will surely follow. Or, she paused, her voice catching in her throat. Or I can defy the prophecy, she continued, her voice filled with a newfound resolve. I can choose to protect Earth, to prevent the convergence, even if it means sacrificing my people's legacy, their chance for redemption. Eli squeezed her hand, his gaze unwavering. Whatever you choose, Kaelas, I'll be with you. But remember, the choice is yours, and yours alone. Kaelas looked at him, her heart filled with gratitude for his unwavering support. She knew that the decision she made would have far-reaching consequences, not just for herself, but for everyone she cared about. As she contemplated her options, the sanctuary's inhabitants gathered around her, their faces etched with a mix of hope and fear. They had heard whispers of the prophecy, of the chosen one who would determine their fate. Now, they looked to Kaelas, their eyes pleading for guidance, for a glimmer of hope in the face of an uncertain future. Kaelas stood before them, her resolve unwavering. I have seen the visions, she said, her voice echoing through the chamber. I have witnessed the past, the mistakes of my people, and the potential for destruction that their return could bring. But I have also seen the beauty of this world, the resilience of its inhabitants, and the hope that flickers in their hearts. She paused, her gaze sweeping over the faces of those who had become her family. I will not sacrifice this world, she declared, her voice ringing with conviction. I will not allow the mistakes of the past to dictate our future. I choose to defy the prophecy, to protect Earth, and to forge a new path for my people. A collective gasp filled the chamber, followed by a wave of murmurs and whispers. Some faces expressed relief, others disappointment, but all eyes were fixed on Kaelas, their fate now intertwined with her decision. As the news of her choice spread throughout the sanctuary, the nexus pulsed with a newfound energy, its light shifting from a warm glow to a vibrant, iridescent hue. The very air crackled with anticipation, the boundaries between worlds blurring as the ancient force responded to Kaelas's defiance. Suddenly, the ground beneath their feet trembled, and a blinding light erupted from the nexus, engulfing the entire chamber. Kaelas closed her eyes against the brilliance, her body tingling with an unfamiliar sensation. When the light faded, the sanctuary was transformed. The once hidden valley was now bathed in sunlight, its protective force dissipated, its secrets exposed to the world. The human factions, their drones and vehicles rendered useless, stood frozen in disbelief, their dreams of conquest shattered. Kaelas and Eli emerged from the sanctuary, their hands clasped tightly together. They looked out at the transformed landscape, their hearts filled with a mix of trepidation and hope. The choice had been made, the prophecy defied, and the future of both worlds now rested in their hands. The convergence had been averted, but the consequences of Kaelas's decision were yet to be fully realized. The Zephyrians, scattered across the globe, would awaken to a new reality, their memories restored, their knowledge reclaimed, and humanity, faced with the undeniable proof of alien existence, would have to grapple with the implications of this revelation. The world beyond the sanctuary was starkly different from the haven Kaelas and Eli had grown accustomed to. The sun, no longer filtered by the protective force, beat down intensely, making Kaelas's skin tingle. The air, once filled with the sweet scent of exotic flora, now carried the familiar smells of earth and salt. They emerged from the valley, their footsteps echoing in the sudden silence. The human forces, their technology rendered useless, had retreated in disarray, leaving behind a trail of abandoned vehicles and broken drones. Kaelas surveyed the scene, a sense of both triumph and trepidation filling her heart. "They're gone," Eli said, his voice a mixture of relief and disbelief. "We did it." Kaelas nodded, her gaze sweeping across the landscape. "For now," she said, her voice tinged with caution. "But this is just the beginning. The world has changed, Eli, and we have to be ready for what comes next." As they ventured further from the sanctuary, they encountered the first signs of the awakening. Zephyrians, once scattered and amnesiac, were emerging from their hidden lives, their memories restored, their true identities revealed. Some were farmers, their hands calloused from years of tilling the earth. Others were artists, their creations infused with a touch of otherworldly beauty. And still others were scientists, their minds brimming with knowledge that had been dormant for centuries. The reunions were joyous and bittersweet, filled with tears of both happiness and sorrow. Families long separated were reunited, while others mourned the loss of loved ones who had not survived the long years of hiding. Kaelas, though an outsider to these reunions, felt a deep connection to her people, their shared history and experiences resonating within her. But the awakening was not without its challenges. The Zephyrians, their memories restored, now faced the daunting task of reintegrating into a world that had moved on without them. Their technology, once far advanced, was now outdated, their knowledge fragmented and incomplete. And the humans, confronted with the undeniable proof of alien existence, reacted with a mix of fear, curiosity, and hostility. Governments scrambled to contain the situation, their military forces mobilized in a show of strength. The media frenzy was relentless, with news outlets broadcasting images of the Zephyrian survivors and speculating on their intentions. Conspiracy theories abounded, fueling public anxiety and distrust. Kaelas and Eli found themselves caught in the crossfire, their identities known to both the Zephyrians and the human authorities. They became symbols of hope for some, targets of suspicion for others. Their every move was scrutinized, their motives questioned, their intentions doubted. But Kaelas refused to be intimidated. She had made her choice, defied the prophecy, and now she was determined to see it through. With Eli by her side, she embarked on a new mission to bridge the gap between her people and the humans, to foster understanding and cooperation in a world teetering on the brink of chaos. Their journey took them across continents, from bustling cities to remote villages, from the halls of power to the hidden enclaves of Zephyrian survivors. They faced resistance and hostility, but also found allies and supporters, humans and Zephyrians alike, who believed in the possibility of a peaceful coexistence. Kaelas, drawing upon her scientific expertise and the knowledge she had gained from the sanctuary, worked tirelessly to develop technologies that could benefit both her people and the humans. She created devices that could purify water, generate clean energy, and heal the sick. She shared her knowledge freely, hoping to build trust and goodwill. Eli, with his understanding of human nature and his unwavering loyalty to Kaelas, became her bridge to the human world. He negotiated with governments, spoke to the media, and advocated for the Zephyrians' right to exist peacefully on Earth. His calm demeanor and reasoned arguments helped to quell some of the fear and suspicion that surrounded them. But their efforts were not without opposition. The human factions that had pursued Kaelas remained a constant threat, their greed and ambition undeterred. They sought to control the Zephyrian technology, to exploit its power for their own gain. And there were those within the Zephyrian community who resisted integration, clinging to the past and harboring resentment towards the humans who had once hunted them. Kaelas and Eli found themselves walking a tightrope, navigating the complexities of two worlds colliding. They faced challenges at every turn, their resolve tested, their bond strained. But through it all, they held on to the hope that had brought them together in the first place, the hope for a better future, a world where humans and Zephyrians could coexist in harmony. As the chapter drew to a close, Kaelas and Eli stood on a hilltop overlooking a vast expanse of human settlements. The lights of the city twinkled in the distance, a testament to the resilience and ingenuity of the human spirit. Kaelas looked at Eli, her eyes filled with a mixture of determination and hope. "We have a long road ahead of us," she said, her voice steady, "but I believe we can make a difference. Together, we can build a bridge between our worlds." Eli nodded, his gaze mirroring her own. "Together," he echoed, his voice filled with unwavering conviction. "We'll face whatever comes our way, and we'll make this work. For both our peoples and the future of this planet." The awakening of the Zephyrians sent ripples through the global community, sparking a wave of both fascination and fear. Governments struggled to maintain order as the media frenzy intensified, and public opinion oscillated between cautious optimism and outright xenophobia. Kaelas and Eli found themselves thrust into the spotlight, their every move scrutinized by the world. They became the faces of the Zephyrian presence on Earth, their actions and words carrying immense weight. The pressure was relentless, the stakes impossibly high. Despite the challenges, Kaelas remained steadfast in her mission. She established a Zephyrian council, a governing body that would represent her people and negotiate with the human authorities. She advocated for peaceful coexistence, emphasizing the potential benefits of collaboration and knowledge sharing. Eli, with his deep understanding of human culture and politics, became her invaluable advisor. He helped her navigate the treacherous waters of diplomacy, his calm demeanor and reasoned arguments often diffusing tense situations. Together, they built bridges between the two worlds, fostering dialogue and understanding where there had once been only suspicion and fear. But the path to peace was fraught with obstacles. The human factions that had pursued Kaelas resurfaced, their greed and ambition undeterred. They sought to exploit the Zephyrian technology, to control its power for their own gain. They spread misinformation, fueled fear, and even resorted to violence in their attempts to undermine Kaelas' efforts. The Zephyrian community, too, was not without its internal struggles. Some, scarred by the past, remained distrustful of humans, their resentment simmering beneath the surface. Others, eager to embrace their newfound freedom, clashed with the more conservative elements of their society, creating divisions that threatened to tear them apart. Kaelas found herself walking a tightrope, balancing the needs and desires of her people with the demands of a world that was still coming to terms with their existence. She had to be both a leader and a mediator, a visionary and a pragmatist. One evening, as Kaelas and Eli sat on a balcony overlooking the sanctuary, the weight of their responsibilities heavy on their shoulders, Eli turned to her, his expression serious. "It's not easy, is it?" he asked, his voice soft. "Bearing the weight of two worlds on your shoulders." Kaelas sighed, her gaze fixed on the distant horizon. "No," she admitted, "it's not. But it's a burden I chose to carry. I made a promise, Eli, to protect this world, to forge a new path for my people, and I intend to keep that promise, no matter the cost." Eli reached out, his hand finding hers. "I know you will," he said, his voice filled with unwavering support. "And I'll be with you every step of the way." Kaelas looked at him, her heart swelling with gratitude. In the midst of chaos and uncertainty, Eli had become her constant, his presence a source of strength and solace. Their bond, forged in the crucible of shared danger and mutual respect, had blossomed into something deeper, something that transcended the boundaries of their different worlds. As they sat in comfortable silence, the stars twinkled above them, a reminder of the vastness of the universe and the infinite possibilities it held. Months passed, marked by a delicate dance of diplomacy, technological advancements, and the gradual acceptance of the Zephyrian presence on Earth. Kaelas, with Eli's unwavering support, navigated the complexities of interspecies relations, her determination and compassion earning her the respect of both humans and Zephyrians. The sanctuary, once a hidden refuge, became a hub of cultural exchange and collaboration. Zephyrian scientists worked alongside their human counterparts, sharing knowledge and developing technologies that could benefit both worlds. The once abandoned ruins were transformed into research centers, their ancient secrets yielding new insights into the universe's mysteries. Eli, immersed in this vibrant tapestry of cultures, found himself bridging the gap between the two worlds. He became a trusted intermediary, his understanding of both human and Zephyrian perspectives proving invaluable in fostering communication and trust. But the human factions, their greed and ambition unquenched, continued to plot in the shadows. They saw the Zephyrian technology as a means to an end, a tool to achieve their own selfish goals. They spread misinformation, fueled fear, and sought to exploit the vulnerabilities of both humans and Zephyrians. One day, a chilling report reached the sanctuary. A rogue faction, led by the same ruthless figure Kaelas had encountered during the attack, had acquired a piece of ancient Zephyrian technology, a weapon capable of unimaginable destruction. Their intentions were clear: to use this power to destabilize the fragile peace and seize control. Kaelas' heart sank as she realized the gravity of the situation. The prophecy, once thought to be averted, now cast a long shadow over their newfound hope. The conflict it foretold was not merely a possibility, but an impending reality. She turned to Eli, her eyes filled with a mix of determination and fear. "We have to stop them," she said, her voice firm. "We can't let them unleash this weapon on the world." Eli nodded, his expression grim. "We won't," he said. "But we need a plan. We can't just charge in blindly." Together, they gathered the sanctuary's leaders, their faces etched with concern. The news of the stolen weapon had spread like wildfire, its potential for destruction sending shockwaves through the community. Kaelas, drawing upon her knowledge of Zephyrian technology and the wisdom she had gained from the Nexus, devised a daring plan. They would infiltrate the rogue faction's stronghold, disable the weapon, and expose their treachery to the world. The mission was fraught with danger, but the stakes were too high to ignore. Kaelas, Eli, and a team of skilled Zephyrian and human operatives embarked on a covert operation, their every move shrouded in secrecy. They navigated the treacherous landscape of human society, blending in with the crowds, their alien features concealed by advanced holographic disguises. They infiltrated the faction's heavily guarded facility, their every step a calculated risk. As they reached the heart of the stronghold, they found the stolen weapon, its ominous presence pulsating with dark energy. The faction's leader stood before it, his eyes gleaming with a twisted sense of triumph. "You're too late," he sneered, his voice dripping with malice. "The world will soon know the true power of the Zephyrians, and it will be at my command." Kaelas stepped forward, her voice ringing with authority. "You're wrong," she said. "The Zephyrians are not conquerors. We are not destroyers. We seek peace, not power." The leader laughed, his voice echoing through the chamber. "Peace," he scoffed. "The only peace I seek is the peace that comes with absolute control. And with this weapon, I will have it." He raised his hand, ready to activate the device. But before he could, Eli lunged forward, tackling him to the ground. A struggle ensued, the two figures grappling amidst the humming energy of the weapon. Kaelas acted quickly, her fingers flying across a nearby control panel. She rerouted the weapon's power source, overloading its systems and causing it to spark and sputter. The leader, realizing his plan was unraveling, broke free from Eli's grasp and lunged for the weapon. But it was too late. The device exploded, its energy dissipating harmlessly into the atmosphere. The shockwave knocked everyone to the ground, the chamber filling with smoke and debris. Kaelas coughed, her eyes stinging from the acrid fumes. She looked around, searching for Eli. He emerged from the haze, his face streaked with grime, but his eyes shining with triumph. He reached out a hand, helping Kaelas to her feet. "It's over," he said, his voice filled with relief. "We did it." Kaelas nodded, her heart overflowing with gratitude. "We did it," she echoed, her gaze meeting his. "Together." The aftermath of the rogue faction's attack left the sanctuary and the world at large in a state of heightened alert. The incident served as a stark reminder that not all humans were ready to embrace the Zephyrian presence, and that the path to peaceful coexistence was paved with challenges. Within the sanctuary, the atmosphere was a mix of relief and unease. The successful defense had solidified the bond between its inhabitants, but the knowledge that their haven was no longer invulnerable cast a long shadow over their celebrations. Kaelas, driven by a renewed sense of urgency, turned her attention back to the ancient ruins. The prophecy, the stolen weapon, the human faction's relentless pursuit, all these threads seemed to converge on a single, terrifying truth. The fate of both Zephyrians and humans was inextricably linked. "We need to understand the past," she told Eli one evening, her voice filled with a quiet determination. "The ruins hold the answers, Eli. We need to delve deeper, uncover the full extent of my people's history on Earth." Eli, ever supportive, nodded. "I'm with you, Kaelas. Where do we start?" Their quest for knowledge led them to unexplored corners of the sanctuary, to hidden chambers and forgotten archives. They worked tirelessly, deciphering ancient texts, analyzing long-dormant technologies, and piecing together the fragments of a history that spanned millennia. With each new discovery, the tapestry of the Zephyrians' past on Earth grew richer and more complex. They learned of a time when their ancestors had walked freely among humans, sharing their knowledge and technology in an era of unprecedented cooperation. But they also uncovered evidence of a growing divide, of fear and mistrust that ultimately led to conflict and the Zephyrians' forced retreat into hiding. One day, while exploring a particularly remote section of the ruins, Kaelas stumbled upon a hidden chamber unlike any they had encountered before. Its walls were adorned with murals depicting scenes of both harmony and strife, of Zephyrians and humans working together, and of battles fought with devastating consequences. At the center of the chamber stood a pedestal, upon which rested a crystalline orb, its surface etched with intricate symbols. Kaelas approached it cautiously, her heart pounding with anticipation. As she reached out to touch it, the orb pulsed with a soft light, and images flooded her mind. She saw the Zephyrians' first arrival on Earth, their ships landing on a lush, untouched continent. She witnessed their initial encounters with the indigenous human tribes, the wonder and curiosity that filled both sides. She saw the exchange of knowledge, the blossoming of new technologies, and the creation of a harmonious society where both species thrived. But the visions soon turned dark. A power-hungry faction within the Zephyrian ranks sought to exploit Earth's resources, to bend the planet to their will. Their actions sparked a conflict that escalated into a full-scale war, leaving both sides devastated. In the final moments of the vision, Kaelas saw the Zephyrians retreating into the sanctuary. Their numbers dwindled, their spirits broken. The protective force was activated, sealing them off from the world they had once hoped to call home. The orb's light faded, and Kaelas stumbled back, her knees weak, her mind reeling from the weight of the images she had witnessed. Eli rushed to her side, his concern evident in his eyes. "Kaelas, what did you see?" he asked, his voice gentle. Kaelas took a deep breath, her voice trembling slightly. "The truth," she said, her gaze fixed on the orb. "The truth of my people's past, their mistakes, and the consequences of their actions." Eli nodded, his expression somber. "It's a heavy burden to bear," he said. "But it's also a chance to learn, to understand, and to make amends." Kaelas looked at him, her eyes filled with a newfound resolve. "You're right," she said. "We can't change the past, but we can shape the future, and I intend to do everything in my power to ensure that the mistakes of my ancestors are not repeated." With a shared glance, Kaelas and Eli turned back to the orb, their minds filled with the knowledge they had gained. The Zephyrians' past on Earth was a cautionary tale, a reminder of the dangers of unchecked ambition and the importance of humility and respect. News of the foiled attack and the subsequent revelation of Zephyrian history reverberated through the sanctuary, casting a long shadow over the newfound optimism that had followed their victory. The knowledge of their ancestors' past mistakes weighed heavily on the survivors, their sense of identity and purpose thrown into question. The Sanctuary's council, a diverse group representing the various alien species that called this haven home, convened in the Grand Chamber where Kaelas and Eli had first encountered the Nexus. The atmosphere was charged with tension, the weight of their collective history and the uncertain future hanging heavy in the air. Lyra, the silver-haired Kaetari leader, stood at the head of the council, her expression grave. "The humans know of our existence," she began, her voice echoing through the chamber. "They have seen our power, our technology, and they are afraid." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the crowd. The recent attack had shattered any illusions of peaceful coexistence, reminding them of the deep-seated fear and suspicion that still lingered in the human world. "We cannot remain here," a voice called out from the back of the chamber. It belonged to Tolan, a stern-faced Arcturian known for his cautious nature. "The humans will not rest until they have control over our technology, our secrets. We must retreat, find a new haven, before it's too late." His words struck a chord with many of the survivors, their faces etched with worry. The sanctuary had been their home for generations, a place of refuge and solace. But now, its safety was compromised, its existence exposed. Kaelas stepped forward, her voice firm and resolute. "We cannot run," she said, her gaze sweeping over the assembled crowd. "We cannot hide forever. We have a responsibility to this world, to the humans who share it with us. We must find a way to coexist, to build a future together." Eli stood beside her, his presence a silent show of support. He had witnessed firsthand the resilience and compassion of both humans and Zephyrians, and he believed in the possibility of a shared future. "Kaelas is right," he said, his voice steady. "We cannot let fear dictate our actions. We must reach out, build bridges of understanding, and work towards a peaceful resolution." Their words sparked a heated debate within the council. Some, like Tolan, argued for isolation, their trust in humanity shattered by the recent attack. Others, inspired by Kaelas and Eli's courage, saw the potential for cooperation and growth. The discussion raged for hours, each side presenting their arguments with passion and conviction. The fate of the sanctuary, and perhaps the future of both Zephyrians and humans, hung in the balance. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the chamber, Lyra rose to her feet, her expression thoughtful. "We have heard many voices today," she said, her voice carrying the weight of centuries of wisdom. "And we have much to consider. But one thing is clear, we cannot remain stagnant. We must choose a path, a future for our people." She turned to Kaelas and Eli, her gaze piercing. "You two have seen the best and worst of both our worlds," she said. "You have witnessed the darkness of conflict and the light of hope. Your voices carry weight, your actions inspire. What do you propose?" Kaelas and Eli exchanged a glance, their shared purpose reflected in each other's eyes. They had faced countless challenges together, their bond forged in the crucible of adversity. Now, they stood before the council, ready to offer their vision for the future. "We believe in the possibility of peace," Kaelas began, her voice steady and resolute. "We believe that humans and Zephyrians can coexist, can learn from each other, and can build a better future together." Eli nodded, his expression firm. "But peace does not come easily," he added. "It requires trust, understanding, and a willingness to compromise. We must reach out to those humans who share our vision and who believe in the potential for cooperation. We must show them that we are not a threat, but an opportunity." The Zephyrian technology, once a closely guarded secret, now flowed into the human world, its impact felt across every continent. Clean energy solutions revolutionized industries, medical advancements eradicated diseases that had plagued humanity for centuries, and sustainable agricultural practices transformed barren landscapes into fertile fields. The world was changing, evolving at a pace that both exhilarated and terrified its inhabitants. Kaelas, her scientific mind ablaze with possibilities, worked tirelessly alongside human researchers, her knowledge and insights unlocking new frontiers of understanding. She marveled at the human spirit, its resilience and adaptability in the face of such rapid change. But she also recognized the potential dangers of unchecked progress, the ethical and moral dilemmas that arose from the wielding of such power. Eli, ever the voice of reason, cautioned against complacency. "Progress is a double-edged sword," he reminded Kaelas one evening, as they watched the sunset paint the sky with vibrant hues. "It can bring enlightenment and prosperity, but it can also lead to destruction and conflict if not wielded responsibly." Kaelas nodded, her gaze thoughtful. "I understand," she said. "But we cannot shy away from progress, Eli. We must embrace it, guide it, and ensure that it serves the greater good." Their conversations often turned to the philosophical implications of the Zephyrian presence on Earth. What did it mean to be human in a world where the boundaries between species were blurring? How could they ensure that the benefits of technology were shared equitably, without exacerbating existing inequalities? The human factions, their influence waning, but their ambition undimmed, continued to sow seeds of discord. They exploited the fears and anxieties of those who resisted change, painting the Zephyrians as a threat to humanity's dominance. They spread misinformation, fueled conspiracy theories, and sought to undermine the fragile alliance that Kaelas and Eli had worked so hard to build. One day, a wave of protests erupted in major cities across the globe, fueled by a viral video that purported to show Zephyrian technology being used for military purposes. The footage was cleverly edited, its authenticity questionable, but it was enough to ignite the flames of fear and suspicion. Kaelas and Eli watched the news reports with growing unease, their hearts heavy with the knowledge that their enemies were still at work. They knew they had to act quickly to quell the unrest and prevent the situation from escalating into violence. Kaelas addressed the world once more, her voice calm and resolute as she debunked the false claims and reaffirmed the Zephyrians' commitment to peace. Eli, utilizing his deep understanding of human psychology, worked behind the scenes, engaging with influential figures and community leaders to promote dialogue and understanding. Their efforts bore fruit, the tide of public opinion gradually shifting back towards acceptance and cooperation. But the incident served as a stark reminder of the fragility of their progress, the constant threat of those who sought to exploit fear and division for their own gain. As the weeks turned into months, the Zephyrian presence on Earth became more integrated, their technology woven into the fabric of human society. The sanctuary, once a hidden haven, transformed into a bustling center of learning and innovation, its gates open to those who sought knowledge and understanding. Kaelas and Eli, their bond deepened by shared challenges and triumphs, continued to navigate the complexities of this new world. They faced each obstacle with courage and determination, their love for each other a beacon of hope in a world still grappling with the implications of its own transformation. Despite the progress made in fostering cooperation between humans and Zephyrians, an undercurrent of unease persisted. The rogue factions, though weakened, continued to operate in the shadows, their whispers of dissent and fear finding fertile ground in the hearts of those who resisted change. Kaelas, her senses attuned to the subtle shifts in the energy around her, couldn't shake the feeling that something was amiss. The visions that had once plagued her dreams returned, their cryptic messages hinting at a darkness lurking beneath the surface of their newfound peace. One night, as she lay awake in Eli's arms, the visions grew more vivid, more urgent. She saw images of conflict, of cities ablaze, of humans and Zephyrians locked in a desperate struggle for survival. The prophecy, once thought to be averted, now echoed through her mind, its warnings resonating with a chilling clarity. She sat up abruptly, her heart pounding in her chest. Eli stirred beside her, his eyes filled with concern. "Kaelas, what's wrong?" he asked, his voice laced with worry. Kaelas took a deep breath, her voice trembling slightly. "The visions," she said, her gaze distant. "They're back. The prophecy? It's not over." Eli's expression hardened. "What do they show?" Kaelas hesitated, the images still fresh in her mind. "Conflict," she said finally. "Destruction. A war between our peoples." A heavy silence fell over the room, broken only by the soft chirping of crickets outside. Eli reached out, his hand finding Kaelas's, his touch a silent promise of support. "We have to do something," he said, his voice firm. "We can't let this happen." Kaelas nodded, her resolve hardening. "I know," she said, "but we need to understand what's triggering these visions." The prophecy spoke of a choice, a decision that would determine the fate of both worlds. But I defied that choice, Eli. I chose peace. So why are these visions returning? Their quest for answers led them back to the sanctuary, to the heart of the Nexus. They sought the wisdom of the Ancient Ones, the keepers of Zephyrian knowledge and lore. Lyra, her silver hair shimmering in the Nexus's glow, listened intently as Kaelas recounted her visions. "The prophecy is not a simple path," Lyra explained, her voice echoing through the chamber. "It is a tapestry of possibilities, woven from the threads of choice and consequence. Your decision to defy the convergence was a bold one, Kaelas, but it did not erase the potential for conflict. The seeds of discord were sown long ago, and they have taken root in the hearts of both humans and Zephyrians." Kaelas's heart sank. "So what do we do?" she asked, her voice filled with desperation. "How do we prevent this war?" Lyra's gaze was steady, her eyes filled with a wisdom that transcended time. "The answer lies not in fighting the prophecy, but in understanding it, she said. You must seek out the source of the discord, the catalyst that threatens to ignite the flames of conflict. Only then can you hope to extinguish them. Kaelas nodded, her determination renewed. We will find it, she said, her voice firm. We will not let the past dictate our future. With Eli by her side, Kaelas embarked on a new mission, a race against time to uncover the hidden forces that threaten to tear their worlds apart. They traveled across continents, their search leading them to forgotten Zephyrian outposts, clandestine human laboratories, and the darkest corners of both societies. They encountered resistance at every turn, their pursuit of the truth met with hostility and suspicion. The rogue factions, their influence growing in the wake of the recent attack, sought to thwart their efforts, their agents lurking in the shadows, ready to strike. But Kaelas and Eli pressed on, their bond strengthened by the shared danger and their unwavering commitment to their cause. They uncovered evidence of a conspiracy, a plot to manipulate both humans and Zephyrians, to ignite the flames of conflict and plunge the world into chaos. As they delved deeper into the mystery, they realized that the prophecy was not just a prediction, but a self-fulfilling prophecy. The fear and mistrust that had been sown were creating the very conditions that would lead to war. The dust settled, both literally and figuratively, in the wake of the Conclave's defeat. The world was left reeling, the revelation of the Zephyrians and their hidden sanctuary shaking the foundations of human understanding. News outlets buzzed with speculation, governments scrambled to establish protocols, and the general public grappled with a mixture of awe, fear, and cautious optimism. Within the sanctuary, a sense of fragile peace prevailed. The scars of battle were still visible scorch marks on the once pristine structures, the remnants of human technology scattered like fallen leaves. Yet, amidst the wreckage, a spirit of resilience bloomed. Zephyrians and humans worked side by side, clearing debris, tending to the wounded, and rebuilding what had been damaged. Kaelas, hailed as a hero by both her people and many humans, found herself thrust into a leadership role she hadn't anticipated. The Council, recognizing her wisdom and courage, had appointed her as their liaison to the human world. It was a daunting task, but one she embraced with unwavering determination. Eli, her constant companion and confidant, stood by her side. His understanding of human nature and his unwavering loyalty made him an invaluable asset in navigating the complexities of interspecies diplomacy. Together, they faced a barrage of challenges, from negotiating treaties to addressing public concerns to quelling the lingering embers of fear and prejudice. One of their first initiatives was to establish a Zephyrian embassy in a major human city, a symbolic gesture of openness and cooperation. The embassy, a marvel of Zephyrian architecture and technology, became a focal point for cultural exchange and collaboration. Human scientists and researchers flocked to its halls, eager to learn from the Zephyrians and tap into their advanced knowledge. Kaelas, her scientific mind invigorated by the possibilities, led a team of Zephyrian experts in sharing their technological advancements with the world. Clean energy solutions, medical breakthroughs, and sustainable agricultural practices flowed from the sanctuary, transforming industries and improving lives across the globe. The impact was undeniable. Pollution levels plummeted, previously incurable diseases were eradicated, and famine-stricken regions flourished with newfound abundance. The Zephyrian presence, once a source of fear, was now seen by many as a beacon of hope, a catalyst for a brighter future. But not everyone shared this optimism. The remnants of the Conclave, their numbers diminished, but their hatred undeterred, continued to spread their poisonous ideology. They exploited the anxieties of those who resisted change, painting the Zephyrians as a threat to human autonomy and identity. Their propaganda machine, fueled by misinformation and fear-mongering, sought to undermine the fragile peace and reignite the flames of conflict. Kaelas and Eli, their resolve unwavering, fought back on multiple fronts. They exposed the Conclave's lies, countered their propaganda with truth and transparency, and worked tirelessly to build bridges of understanding between the two species. One evening, as they walked through the bustling streets of the human city where the embassy was located, Kaelas paused, her gaze drawn to a group of protesters chanting slogans against the Zephyrians. Their faces were contorted with anger and fear, their voices a discordant chorus of hate. Eli, sensing her unease, gently squeezed her hand. "Don't let them get to you," he said, his voice soft but firm. "They're a minority, their voices fueled by ignorance and fear." Kaelas nodded, but the sight of the protesters troubled her deeply. She had witnessed firsthand the destructive power of prejudice and hatred, and she knew that left unchecked, it could undo all the progress they had made. "We have to keep fighting," she said, her voice filled with a quiet determination. "We have to show them that we're not their enemies, that we want to build a better future together." Eli smiled, his eyes filled with admiration. "I know you will," he said, "and I'll be right there beside you, every step of the way." The world outside the sanctuary pulsed with a newfound energy, a blend of technological marvel and societal unease. Zephyrian innovation, once confined to the hidden valley, now permeated human civilization. Cities gleamed with clean energy, hospitals brimmed with miraculous cures, and once barren fields yielded bountiful harvests. Yet, beneath this veneer of progress, shadows lingered. The remnants of the conclave, driven underground, but not extinguished, plotted their resurgence. They exploited the anxieties of those who clung to the old ways, their whispers of fear and xenophobia spreading like a contagion. Rumors of Zephyrian dominance, of a hidden agenda to supplant humanity, circulated in the darkest corners of the internet and the hushed conversations of backroom conspirators. Kaelas and Eli, their senses sharpened by the ever-present threat, worked tirelessly to counter the conclave's influence. They addressed public forums, debunked conspiracy theories, and showcased the tangible benefits of Zephyrian collaboration. But the seeds of doubt had been sown, and their efforts felt like a constant battle against an unseen enemy. One day, a chilling message appeared on Kaelas's console, its encrypted code bearing the mark of the conclave. It contained a single, ominous sentence: "The prophecy will be fulfilled. Prepare for the reckoning." Kaelas's heart sank as she shared the message with Eli. The prophecy, once thought to be neutralized, now resurfaced like a specter from the past. The visions of conflict and destruction that had haunted her dreams returned, their urgency amplified by the conclave's threat. "They're trying to manipulate us," Eli said, his voice grim. "They want to create the very conflict the prophecy foretold, to justify their own agenda." Kaelas nodded, her mind racing. But how? What's their plan? Their investigation led them to a series of seemingly unrelated incidents: a Zephyrian scientist mysteriously disappearing, a power outage in a major city blamed on Zephyrian technology, a series of coordinated cyberattacks that sowed chaos and confusion. The conclave's fingerprints were everywhere, their invisible hand guiding events towards a predetermined outcome. As they delved deeper, Kaelas and Eli uncovered a disturbing truth. The conclave had infiltrated the Zephyrian Council, their agents posing as loyal members of the community. They were feeding misinformation to both sides, exacerbating tensions and creating a climate of fear and mistrust. The revelation shook Kaelas to her core. She had trusted her fellow Zephyrians, believed in their shared commitment to peace. Now, she realized that the enemy was not just outside the sanctuary's walls, but within it as well. "We have to expose them," she said, her voice filled with a righteous anger. "We can't let them destroy everything we've worked for." But exposing the conclave's agents would not be easy. They were masters of deception, their true allegiances carefully concealed. Kaelas and Eli had to tread carefully, gathering evidence and building a case that would convince the council and the human authorities. Their investigation led them to a series of clandestine meetings, coded messages, and hidden agendas. They faced danger at every turn, the conclave's agents relentless in their pursuit, their methods ruthless and unpredictable. One night, as Kaelas and Eli followed a lead to a remote location, they were ambushed. A group of masked figures emerged from the shadows, their weapons trained on the unsuspecting pair. "Nowhere to run, Zephyrian," a voice hissed from behind a mask. "Your time is up." Kaelas and Eli stood back to back, their hearts pounding in unison. They were outnumbered and outgunned, their backs against the proverbial wall. But they would not surrender without a fight. The air crackled with tension as the standoff escalated. The Conclave's agents, their faces hidden behind masks, advanced slowly, their weapons poised to strike. Kaelas's mind raced, searching for a way out of this predicament. She couldn't let them capture her, couldn't let them silence the truth. But how could they possibly escape this? Just as all hope seemed lost, a familiar hum filled the air. The ground beneath their feet trembled, and a blinding light erupted from the forest edge. The Conclave's agents hesitated, their attention drawn to the unexpected phenomenon. And in that moment of distraction, Kaelas and Eli made their move. With a synchronized burst of speed and agility, Kaelas and Eli launched themselves into the fray. Kaelas, her movements fluid and precise, disarmed the nearest assailant with a swift kick, sending his weapon clattering to the ground. Eli, his reflexes honed by years of survival, ducked under a swinging baton and countered with a powerful blow that sent his attacker sprawling. The Conclave's agents, caught off guard by their sudden defiance, scrambled to regroup. But their advantage had been lost, their focus shattered by the distraction. And as the blinding light intensified, a new player entered the scene. A sleek, metallic form emerged from the forest, its surface shimmering with an otherworldly glow. It hovered above the ground, its sleek lines and graceful curves a stark contrast to the human's crude weaponry. From its core emanated a familiar pulse, a rhythmic beat that resonated with Kaelas's very being. "The Sentinel!" Kaelas exclaimed, her voice filled with a mix of awe and relief. The Sentinel, an ancient Zephyrian guardian, had been dormant within the sanctuary for centuries, its activation triggered by the surge of energy released during the Conclave's attack. Now it stood as a silent protector, its presence a testament to the enduring legacy of Kaelas's people. The Conclave's agents, their faces contorted with fear and disbelief, turned their weapons on the Sentinel. But their attacks were futile, their bullets and energy blast harmlessly absorbed by the shimmering force field that surrounded it. With a graceful motion, the Sentinel unleashed a wave of energy, its power sweeping across the clearing. The Conclave's agents were thrown back, their weapons deactivated, their bodies momentarily paralyzed. Kaelas and Eli seized the opportunity, their movements swift and decisive. They disarmed the remaining attackers, their teamwork a testament to the bond they had forged. As the dust settled, the Conclave's agents lay scattered and defeated, their masks discarded, their identities revealed. Among them were familiar faces, Zephyrians who had succumbed to the Conclave's seductive promises of power and control. The betrayal stung, but Kaelas refused to let it consume her. She turned to the fallen Zephyrians, her voice firm but compassionate. "You have been misled," she said. "The Conclave's path leads only to destruction. Choose a different path, a path of unity and hope." Some of the Zephyrians looked away, their shame evident in their averted gazes. Others met her eyes, a flicker of remorse and understanding dawning in their expressions. The Conclave's grip on their hearts was loosening, its poisonous influence waning in the face of truth and compassion. A decade had passed since the Conclave's defeat, a decade marked by unprecedented change and progress. The world had transformed. Zephyrian technology, once a closely guarded secret, had integrated into human civilization, revolutionizing industries, expanding horizons, and redefining what was possible. Cities once choked by pollution now thrived under clean energy. Arid landscapes, once barren, now bloomed with crops, nourished by Zephyrian agricultural techniques. Diseases that had plagued humanity for centuries were eradicated, replaced by a newfound sense of health and vitality. The sanctuary, its protective force field dissolved, had become a bustling metropolis, a testament to the resilience and ingenuity of its inhabitants. Zephyrian and human architects collaborated to create a harmonious blend of organic forms and advanced technology, a city that soared toward the sky while remaining grounded. At the center of this transformation stood Kaelas and Eli, their partnership symbolizing the unity that had flourished between their two worlds. Kaelas, now a respected leader among her people, guided the Zephyrians through the tumultuous transition. her wisdom and compassion earning admiration from both humans and aliens. Eli, with his human heart filled with love transcending species boundaries, had become her steadfast companion, offering constant support. Together, they navigated the complexities of interspecies relations, their shared vision of peaceful coexistence guiding their every step. But even as the world celebrated a new era, challenges remained. The scars of the past, both physical and emotional, still lingered. The Conclave's ideology, though discredited, had not been entirely eradicated. Pockets of resistance and xenophobia persisted, fueled by fear and ignorance. Kaelas and Eli continued to champion unity. They traveled the globe, speaking to leaders, addressing public forums, and fostering dialogue between the two species. Their message was one of hope, shared responsibility, and the boundless potential in embracing the unknown. One day, standing on the observation deck of a newly constructed space station and gazing at the vast expanse of the cosmos, Eli turned to Kaelas, his eyes filled with wonder that matched her own. "It's incredible, isn't it?" he said quietly. "To think that just a few years ago, we were fighting for our survival, and now we're on the brink of exploring the stars together." Kaelas nodded, her gaze tracing the constellations shimmering in the darkness. "It shows the resilience of both our peoples," she replied, "and the power of hope." However, even as they celebrated their achievements, a new challenge loomed on the horizon. A distress signal from a distant star system had reached Earth, its cryptic message hinting at a threat that could jeopardize the fragile peace they had worked hard to build. The distress signal had been detected by a joint Zephyrian human monitoring station, its advanced sensors picking up the faint transmission amidst the cosmic background noise. The message was encrypted, incomprehensible to both human and Zephyrian linguists. But the urgency was unmistakable, its repetitive pattern a desperate plea for help. Kaelas and Eli, along with a team of experts from both worlds, were summoned to the monitoring station, a sprawling complex nestled in the heart of the sanctuary. The station was a marvel of Zephyrian engineering, its towering spires and intricate latticework contrasting starkly with the lush greenery surrounding it. Entering the main control room, they were met with the hum of activity. Scientists and technicians, their faces etched with concentration, huddled over consoles, their fingers dancing across holographic interfaces. The atmosphere was tense, the weight of the unknown pressing down on everyone. Kaelas approached the central console, her gaze fixed on the swirling patterns of the encrypted message. She had spent countless hours studying the ancient text of her people, their cryptic symbols and arcane languages a source of endless fascination. But this message was different, its origin shrouded in mystery, its purpose unclear. Eli stood beside her, his eyes scanning the data streaming across the screens. He had always been more comfortable with the tangible, the physical, the things he could see and touch and understand. But he knew that in this realm of codes and ciphers, Kaelas was the expert. "Any progress?" Kaelas asked, turning to Lion, the young Zephyrian technician with a shock of blue hair and nervous energy crackling around him. Lion shook his head, his eyes reflecting his intense thoughts. "We've tried every decryption algorithm we have, both Zephyrian and human," he said. "But the signal is unlike anything we've encountered. It's as if it's designed to be unbreakable." Kaelas nodded, her mind racing. She knew the key to deciphering the message lay not in brute force, but in understanding the underlying structure, the logic that governed its creation. She turned to Eli, her eyes focused and thoughtful. "We need to approach this from a different angle," she said. "We need to think like the ones who sent this message, to understand their motivations, their fears, their hopes." Eli nodded, his gaze steady. "You're right," he said. "But where do we start? We know nothing about them, their culture, or their history." Kaelas paused, her gaze drifting to the swirling patterns of the encrypted signal. Then, suddenly, an idea struck her. She turned to Lion, her voice filled with determination. "We need to access the Nexus," she said. "If anyone can help us understand this signal, it's the Ancient Ones, the keepers of our collective knowledge." Lion's eyes widened. But he nodded, his fingers already flying across the console. The Nexus, the heart of the sanctuary, was a repository of Zephyrian wisdom, a living archive of their history, culture, and essence. If the key to deciphering the signal lay anywhere, it was there. As they made their way to the Nexus, the gravity of the situation settled in. The corridors of the sanctuary, usually bustling with life and activity, seemed quieter, as if the very air was holding its breath. The Nexus was housed deep within the sanctuary, in a chamber that had been carved into the rock itself, a place where the old and new worlds met in a fusion of stone and light. Eli had visited the Nexus before, but its grandeur never ceased to amaze him. The chamber was vast, its domed ceiling stretching high above, covered in thousands of luminescent crystals that cast a soft, ethereal glow. In the center stood the core, a massive, translucent obelisk pulsing with a gentle, steady light, the heart of Zephyrian knowledge. Kaelas approached the core, placing her hand on its smooth surface. At her touch, the light within the obelisk brightened, and the air around them seemed to hum with energy. She closed her eyes, reaching out with her mind, connecting with the ancient consciousness that resided within. Eli watched as symbols and images began to swirl within the core, shifting and changing in a mesmerizing dance. The Nexus was more than just a repository of knowledge. It was alive, a sentient entity that had borne witness to the rise and fall of civilizations, both Zephyrian and human. It held the answers they sought, but it would not give them freely. After a moment, Kaelas opened her eyes, her face serene but focused. "The Nexus has granted us access," she said quietly. "It senses the urgency of our quest. But we must proceed carefully. The knowledge we seek is buried deep within the archives, and the path is not without its dangers." Eli nodded, understanding the unspoken caution. The Nexus was a powerful tool, but it was also unpredictable, its depths filled with forgotten memories and ancient secrets that could overwhelm the unprepared. Kaelas extended her hand towards Eli. "Will you join me?" she asked, her voice calm yet tinged with an edge of anticipation. Eli took her hand without hesitation. "Always," he replied. Together, they stepped into the core. As they entered, a rush of sensations flooded Eli's mind. He felt himself pulled in countless directions at once, as if he were being stretched across time and space. Images flashed before his eyes, glimpses of ancient Zephyrian cities, star systems he couldn't name, and beings that defied description. It was disorienting, but he held firm, anchoring himself to Kaelas, who seemed to move with an ease born of familiarity. Navigating the swirling vortex of the Nexus's mindscape, Kaelas led them toward the ancient archives, a repository of knowledge from epochs past. The archives were a labyrinth of data streams and neural pathways, a testament to the vastness of Zephyrian history and the depth of their curiosity. Here, among the echoes of the past, they hoped to find clues to decode the mysterious signal. They reached a section of the archives that felt different, older, more solemn. Kaelas paused, her senses alert. "This is it," she said softly. "This is where we'll find what we need." Eli nodded, though he wasn't sure how she knew. Trusting in her instincts, he watched as she extended her hand, manipulating the data streams around them. The air seemed to thicken, and a deep, resonant hum filled the space, growing louder with each passing second. Suddenly, a shape began to emerge, a complex structure of light and energy, its form shifting and morphing in a chaotic dance. Eli recognized it as a representation of the encrypted signal, though vastly more intricate than anything he'd seen on the monitoring station screens. Kaelas studied the structure, her eyes narrowing in concentration. "This isn't just a message," she murmured. "It's a map, a guide through their neural network. Whoever sent this wants us to find them, but they've hidden the path among layers of obfuscation and misdirection." Eli frowned, trying to make sense of what she was saying. "A map? But to where?" Kaelas shook her head slowly. "Not where, Eli, who? This signal isn't from a single source. It's a composite, a message woven from the thoughts of many minds. They're calling to us, reaching out across the stars. They need help, but they're afraid to reveal themselves too openly." Eli felt a chill run down his spine. The implications were staggering. A collective consciousness, sending out a cry for help, hidden behind layers of encryption to avoid detection. What kind of beings could do that? And what were they hiding from? "Can we follow it?" he asked, his voice hushed. Kaelas nodded, though her expression remained cautious. "We can, but it won't be easy. The path is fraught with traps and diversions. If we're not careful, we could get lost in here forever." Eli took a deep breath, steeling himself for what was to come. "Then let's not waste any more time. Lead the way." With a final glance at the shifting patterns of the signal, Kaelas stepped forward, guiding them deeper into the mindscape of the Nexus. The further they went, the more distorted their surroundings became. What started as a clear path began to fragment, breaking apart into a kaleidoscope of images and sounds, memories and emotions that defied comprehension. Eli felt a wave of vertigo wash over him, his grip on reality slipping as they pushed forward. He could hear voices faint, indistinct whispering words he couldn't quite catch. It was as if they were moving through a dream, caught between waking and sleeping, their minds tethered to a reality that felt increasingly distant. Kaelas seemed unaffected, her steps steady, her focus unyielding. She moved with purpose, her every motion a testament to her connection with the Nexus and its vast stores of knowledge. Eli drew strength from her confidence, his determination bolstering him against the growing disorientation. After what felt like an eternity, the chaos around them began to subside, the images and sounds fading into a muted background hum. They emerged into a space that felt different, calmer, more structured. The air was thick with potential, a sense of anticipation hanging in the stillness. At the center of the chamber stood a figure, its form obscured by shadows. Eli squinted, trying to make out details, but the figure remained elusive, shrouded in darkness. Kaelas stepped forward cautiously, her hand outstretched. "We are here," she called softly. "We have come to help. Show yourself." For a moment, nothing happened. Then, slowly, the figure began to move, stepping into the light. As it did, Eli felt a jolt of recognition, his breath catching in his throat. The being that emerged was unlike anything he had ever seen. Yet there was something eerily familiar about it, a sense of shared history, a connection that transcended time and space. The being was tall and slender, its skin a deep shade of blue that seemed to shimmer with an inner light. Its eyes were large and luminous, reflecting a depth of wisdom and sorrow that spoke of untold ages. It looked at them with an intensity that bordered on desperation, its gaze boring into their very souls. Eli felt a wave of emotion surge through him as he stared at the being. Fear, curiosity, and a strange sense of kinship intertwined within him. It was as if this creature's presence stirred something deep within his own soul, something ancient and powerful that he couldn't quite grasp. Kaelas maintained her composure, though Eli could sense the tension in her stance. "Who are you?" she asked, her voice steady but filled with a quiet urgency. "Why have you called us here?" The being remained silent for a moment, its eyes never leaving theirs. When it finally spoke, its voice was soft, like a whisper carried on the wind. "We are the remnants," it said, each word tinged with a sadness that was almost palpable. "The last survivors of a forgotten war, scattered across the cosmos, hiding in the shadows of our own despair." Eli exchanged a quick glance with Kaelas. The remnants. He had heard the name before, in whispered tales and half-forgotten legends. A race believed to have been wiped out millennia ago, victims of a conflict that had raged across the galaxy. Yet here stood one of their kind, alive and very much real. "What do you want from us?" Eli asked, his voice barely a whisper. The remnant looked at him, its luminous eyes filled with a mix of hope and fear. "We seek sanctuary," it replied, "a place where we can live without fear, where we can begin to rebuild what we have lost. But more than that, we seek allies. Our enemies are many, and they are relentless. We cannot stand against them alone." Eli felt a surge of sympathy for the creature. He knew all too well what it was like to be hunted, to live in fear of a relentless enemy. "We'll help you," he said firmly, his resolve hardening. "We'll do whatever it takes to keep you safe." Kaelas nodded in agreement. But we need to understand the full extent of the threat, she added. Who are your enemies, and why do they seek to destroy you? The remnant's expression darkened, its features tightening with a mix of anger and sorrow. They are the Voidborn, it said softly, a race of beings who feed on the essence of life itself. They see us as nothing more than a source of sustenance, a means to fuel their endless hunger. They will not stop until we are all consumed. Eli felt a chill run down his spine. The Voidborn, he had heard stories of them as well, whispered in fear by those who had encountered them. Beings of pure darkness, who moved through the galaxy like a plague, consuming everything in their path. They were said to be unstoppable, a force of nature that could not be reasoned with or defeated. But now, as he stood before the remnant, Eli felt a spark of defiance ignite within him. The galaxy was filled with dangers, and the Voidborn were just one of many. But they were not invincible. They could be fought, and they could be defeated. All it took was the will to stand against them. We've faced impossible odds before, Eli said quietly, his voice steady, and we've always found a way to survive. We'll find a way to stop the Voidborn, too. The remnant looked at him, its eyes filled with a glimmer of hope. You speak with courage, human, it said softly. But courage alone will not be enough. The Voidborn are powerful, and they are many. You will need more than just bravery to stand against them. Kaelas stepped forward, her expression resolute. Then we'll find whatever it is we need, she said firmly. We have allies of our own and resources at our disposal. We'll gather our strength, and we'll face this threat together. The remnant nodded, a faint smile touching its lips. Thank you, it said softly. You give us hope where there was none. We will do what we can to aid you in this fight. But be warned, the path ahead will be difficult, and the cost may be great. Eli and Kaelas both nodded, accepting the weight of the remnant's words. They knew the risks involved, but they also knew that they couldn't turn their backs on this new ally. Not when so much was at stake. We're ready, Eli said quietly. Whatever comes, we're ready to face it. The remnant regarded them both with a solemn expression. Very well, it said softly. Then let us prepare for what lies ahead. Together, we may yet have a chance to turn the tide. As the remnant spoke, the chamber around them seemed to pulse with energy, the air thickening with a sense of anticipation. Eli could feel the Nexus responding, its vast stores of knowledge aligning with their newfound purpose. It was as if the ancient consciousness was awakening, ready to lend its aid in the battle to come. Kaelas turned to Eli, her expression thoughtful. We'll need to inform the council, she said quietly. They must be made aware of this threat, and of the alliance we've formed. We'll need their support if we're to stand any chance against the Voidborn. Eli nodded in agreement. And we'll need to reach out to our other allies as well, he added. The more support we can gather, the better our chances will be. Kaelas nodded, her mind already racing with plans and strategies. Then let's not waste any more time, she said firmly. We have much to do, and little time to do it. As they turned to leave, the remnant watched them go, its expression a mix of hope and uncertainty. May the stars guide you, it said softly, and may your courage light the way in the darkness to come. Eli glanced back at the creature, his expression determined. We'll see this through, he said firmly, no matter what it takes. With that, they left the chamber, their minds filled with the weight of the task ahead. The fight against the Voidborn would not be easy, and the path would be fraught with danger. But they were not alone, and they would not face it unprepared. As they made their way back through the sanctuary, Eli couldn't help but feel a sense of resolve settle within him. The challenges ahead were daunting, but they had faced worse before. Together, they would find a way to prevail. For the first time in a long while, Eli felt a flicker of hope. The galaxy was vast and filled with danger, but it was also filled with allies, with friends, and with a strength to overcome any obstacle. And as long as they stood together, there was nothing they couldn't face. As Eli and Kaelas made their way through the narrow corridors of the sanctuary, the gravity of their mission pressed heavily on their minds. The stone walls around them, once a symbol of refuge, now seemed to close in with the weight of their new alliance. The remnants' plea for help had sparked a fire within them, a fierce determination to stand against the void-born threat. But they knew that to face such a powerful enemy, they would need more than just determination, they needed a plan. Reaching the central command chamber, they were greeted by the anxious faces of their fellow resistance members. The group had gathered, alerted by the urgency in Kaelas's message. Tensions were high, and whispers filled the room as they waited for their leaders to speak. Eli stepped forward, raising a hand to quiet the murmurs. "We have news," he began, his voice clear and steady. "News that changes everything." He paused, allowing the weight of his words to sink in. "We've made contact with the remnant survivors of an ancient war. They're being hunted by a race known as the Voidborn, creatures that consume life itself." A murmur of shock rippled through the crowd. The Voidborn were legendary, feared even in the darkest corners of the galaxy. Many had thought them myths, stories told to scare children. But now, the reality of their existence loomed like a shadow over the room. "We've agreed to help them," Kaelas continued, her tone firm and resolute. "But to do that, we need to prepare. The Voidborn are unlike any enemy we've faced. They are relentless, driven by a hunger that knows no bounds. To stand against them, we need allies, resources, and a strategy that gives us even a chance of success." "How can we fight something like the Voidborn?" someone called from the back. "They're unstoppable." Eli nodded, acknowledging the concern. "They're powerful, yes, but they're not invincible. Every force in the universe has its weaknesses. Our first step is to learn everything we can about them, their strengths, their vulnerabilities, their patterns. If we're going to survive, we need to be smarter, faster, and more united than ever before." Kaelas took a step forward, her gaze sweeping over the gathered crowd. "This is our chance," she said. "Our chance to turn the tide, to fight back against the darkness that threatens to consume us all. But we can't do it alone. We need each and every one of you. We need your skills, your knowledge, your courage." The room fell silent as the weight of her words settled over them. For a moment, there was no sound except the faint hum of the sanctuary's ancient systems. Then, slowly, one by one, the members of the resistance began to nod, their faces hardening with determination. They had faced impossible odds before, and they would face them again. Together. "We'll reach out to our contacts," Eli said, breaking the silence. "Send word to every ally, every friend, every hidden outpost. The Voidborn are a threat to us all, and we need every bit of support we can muster." Kaelas nodded. "And we'll start training," she added. "We need to be prepared for whatever comes next. The Voidborn won't wait for us to be ready, and we need to make every second count." With their plan set in motion, the room buzzed with renewed energy. The resistance members dispersed, each one eager to begin their tasks. Eli and Kaelas exchanged a quick glance, a silent agreement passing between them. There was no time to waste. Over the next few days, the sanctuary transformed into a hive of activity. Communications relays buzzed with outgoing messages, reaching out to distant allies and hidden cells. The training grounds filled with the sounds of drills and exercises as the resistance prepared for the coming storm. Every member pushed themselves to their limits, driven by the knowledge that their survival depended on their readiness. Eli threw himself into the preparations, working tirelessly alongside Kaelas and the others. He knew that their only chance lay in being as prepared as possible, in gathering as much information and support as they could. He spent hours poring over old texts, searching for any mention of the Voidborn, any clue that might give them an edge. It was during one of these late-night research sessions that he found a reference, buried deep within the pages of an ancient manuscript. A single line that caught his attention. "The Voidborn fear the light of the soul, for it is a flame they cannot extinguish." Eli sat back, his mind racing. Could it be a clue? A hint at a possible weakness? He knew he needed to discuss it with Kaelas and the others. If the Voidborn truly had a vulnerability, even a small one, it could change everything. Rushing to find Kaelas, Eli's mind buzzed with possibilities. If they could harness this knowledge, if they could find a way to turn the Voidborn's own fears against them, they might just stand a chance. But he also knew that time was not on their side. The Voidborn could strike at any moment, and they needed to be ready. He found Kaelas in the command center, surrounded by maps and data feeds. She looked up as he entered, her expression questioning. "What is it?" she asked. "I think I found something," Eli replied, holding up the manuscript. "A way to fight back against the Voidborn." Kaelas took the manuscript, her eyes scanning the text. A slow smile spread across her face as she read. This could be the answer we've been looking for." Eli nodded, his excitement tempered by a sense of urgency. "We need to act fast," he said. "If the Voidborn have a weakness, we need to find a way to exploit it, and we need to do it before they strike." Kaelas nodded, her mind already racing with plans. "Then let's get to work," she said. "We don't have a moment to lose." The days that followed were a blur of activity. With Eli's discovery, the Resistance threw everything they had into researching the Voidborn and their mysterious weakness. Teams worked around the clock, scouring ancient texts, consulting with allies, and analyzing every piece of information they could find. The sanctuary buzzed with a renewed sense of purpose, each member driven by the hope that they might have found the key to their survival. Eli and Kaelas led the charge, coordinating efforts and keeping morale high. Despite the daunting task ahead, they could feel the tide slowly starting to turn in their favor. Every new piece of information, every small discovery, brought them one step closer to understanding the enemy they faced. But as they delved deeper into the mysteries of the Voidborn, they began to uncover a darker truth. The Voidborn were not just hunters, they were conquerors. For eons, they had moved through the galaxy like a shadow, consuming entire worlds and leaving nothing but lifeless husks in their wake. They were a force of nature, a blight that had left a trail of destruction across the cosmos. And now, they were coming for the Resistance. The Voidborn would not stop until every last one of them was consumed, but the Resistance had no intention of going quietly. They would fight back, using every tool at their disposal. One evening, as the team gathered in the central chamber, Eli and Kaelas presented their findings. "We've identified a potential strategy," Eli began, his voice calm but firm. "The Voidborn fear the light of the soul. It's an energy they can't consume, something that disrupts their very essence." Kaelas continued, "We believe that if we can amplify this energy, create a weapon that harnesses it, we might be able to repel the Voidborn, or at least hold them off long enough to find a more permanent solution." Murmurs of hope and uncertainty filled the room. It was a bold plan, one that would require every ounce of their strength and ingenuity. But it was also the best chance they had. "We've already started working on a prototype," Eli added. "Our engineers are adapting some of our existing technology to generate the energy we need. But we'll need time and resources more than we have here." "We need to move to a more secure location," Kaelas said, her tone urgent. "A place where we can work without the constant threat of attack. We need to reach out to the Council, see if they can provide us with the support we need." The Council was a coalition of allied factions, each with its own resources and strengths. They had worked with the Resistance before, providing aid and shelter when needed. But asking for their help now would be a risk. The Council was cautious, and they might not be willing to commit to a cause as dangerous as this one. Still, they had no choice. The Voidborn were coming, and they needed all the help they could get. "I'll go to the Council," Eli volunteered. "I'll make them see the threat we're facing. If they understand what's at stake, they'll have to help us." Kaelas nodded, her expression serious. "Take a team with you. We can't afford to lose you now." Eli agreed, and preparations were made for the journey. As the team prepared to leave, Kaelas pulled Eli aside. "Be careful," she said quietly. "The Voidborn will be watching. They won't want us to succeed." Eli nodded, understanding the gravity of her words. "I will," he promised, "and I'll be back with the Council's support." With that, he turned and joined his team, ready to embark on the next leg of their journey. The path ahead was fraught with danger, but they had no other choice. They had to fight. They had to survive. The journey to the Council's hidden enclave was long and perilous. taking them through regions of space fraught with enemy patrols and natural hazards. But Eli and his team moved with caution, using every trick they had learned over the years to stay undetected. They knew that if the Voidborn caught even a hint of their presence, it could mean disaster. Finally, after days of tense travel, they reached the Enclave. The Council's headquarters was a massive station hidden within the swirling gases of a nebula, a fortress of steel and stone built to withstand any assault. As Eli's ship docked, he felt a surge of anticipation. This was it. Their last, best chance to turn the tide. Inside, they were greeted by the Council members, an eclectic mix of species and factions, each with its own agenda and priorities. Eli wasted no time, launching into a detailed explanation of the threat they faced and the plan they had devised to counter it. The Council listened intently, their expressions grave. They understood the stakes, the risk involved in aiding the resistance. But they also knew that if the Voidborn were not stopped here, they would soon be at their own doors. After a tense silence, the Council leader, a stern-faced woman with sharp eyes, spoke. "We will help you," she said firmly. "We will provide the resources and the support you need. But know this, if we are to succeed, we must all work together. The Voidborn are a threat to us all, and we must stand united against them." Eli nodded, relief washing over him. "Thank you," he said. "We won't let you down." With the Council's support secured, Eli and his team returned to the sanctuary, ready to put their plan into action. They had the tools, the allies, and the determination. Now all that remained was to face the Voidborn and end their reign of terror once and for all. As they prepared for the final battle, Eli felt a sense of calm settle over him. They had come so far, faced so much. But now, at last, they had a chance to make a stand. A chance to fight for their future, and the future of the entire galaxy. The Resistance's preparations intensified with the Council's support. With new resources and manpower at their disposal, they worked tirelessly to develop the weapon that would harness the light of the soul, a beacon of hope in the face of darkness. Engineers and scientists collaborated, blending technology and ancient knowledge to create a device capable of generating the energy needed to repel the Voidborn. As the final components were assembled, Eli and Kaelas stood before the assembled forces of the Resistance and the Council. The tension in the air was palpable, but there was also a sense of shared determination to face whatever lay ahead. "This is it," Eli said, his voice carrying across the chamber. "The moment we've been preparing for. The Voidborn are coming, but we're ready for them. We have the weapon, the knowledge, and the will to fight back. Together, we will stand, and together, we will win." A cheer rose from the crowd, a fierce roar of defiance that echoed through the sanctuary. The time for fear was over. Now was the time to fight. The alarm sounded, signaling the arrival of the Voidborn. Dark ships emerged from the void, sleek and menacing, their forms barely visible against the backdrop of space. The Resistance moved into position, their ships forming a defensive line around the sanctuary. Eli stood at the command center, his eyes fixed on the viewscreen. "Activate the weapon," he ordered. Kaelas nodded, her hands moving over the controls. The chamber filled with a low hum as the device powered up, its core glowing with an intense, otherworldly light. The energy built, crackling through the air like a storm on the brink of breaking. As the first Voidborn ships closed in, the weapon fired. A brilliant beam of light shot out, piercing the darkness and striking the lead ship. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, the ship began to disintegrate, its dark form dissolving into a shower of particles, as if it were being unraveled at a molecular level. Cheers erupted from the Resistance forces, but Eli remained focused. "Stay sharp," he called out. "This is only the beginning." The Voidborn ships continued their advance, but now there was a flicker of hesitation in their movements. They had not expected resistance, and certainly not resistance of this magnitude. The weapon fired again, and another ship vanished in a burst of light. The battle raged on, a desperate struggle between light and darkness. The weapon fired repeatedly, each shot driving back the Voidborn, forcing them to retreat. But the enemy was relentless, launching wave after wave of attacks, each more ferocious than the last. Eli felt the strain of the battle wearing on him, but he refused to give in to despair. They had come too far, fought too hard to back down now. They would see this through to the end. As the Voidborn launched one final assault, the Resistance responded with everything they had. The weapon fired again, a blinding beam of light that tore through the enemy ranks. One by one, the Voidborn ships disintegrated, their dark forms evaporating into the void. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the last Voidborn ship vanished. The battle was over. The Resistance had won. A stunned silence fell over the chamber, followed by a wave of cheers and shouts of victory. They had done it. They had faced the darkness and emerged victorious. Eli let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding, a smile breaking across his face. They had won, but more importantly, they had survived. The galaxy was safe, for now. Kaelas turned to him, her expression a mix of relief and exhaustion. "We did it," she said softly. "We actually did it." Eli nodded, his heart swelling with pride. "Yea," he replied, his voice thick with emotion. "We did." As the celebration continued around them, Eli knew that the fight was not over. There would be other battles, other challenges. But for now, they could rest, secure in the knowledge that they had faced the darkness and won. Together, they had proven that even in the darkest of times, there was always hope. And as long as there was hope, there would always be a reason to fight.